budget.
Yeah, we did one table.
I mean, did you have one in your packet of papers? Did you print it out?
I have it, you said it didn't change from last time, right?
No.
Then I have it from
Okay.
last time.
Thank you.
It's not in that one, and it's in this one, but.
The same thing, right?
Good evening. It is October 11th, 2022, and I'm going to call this regular meeting of Ulysses Town Board to order. It is 7:03 PM. Would you mind doing a roll call, please?
Ms. Olson,
Present.
Ms. Marino,
Present.
Ms. Bouchard,
Present?
Mr. Goldman.
Present.
Right? Hello, Lexi?
Boggs, Mr. Boggs.
Oh, and Mr. Boggs.
Is not present currently. He is anticipating joining remotely under our remote meetings policy for extenuating circumstances, but he is not here yet. Okay, so you've been presented with an agenda. The only thing I would like to request is that we can get a brief introduction to our wonderful new planner who joined us 2 weeks ago. Would you mind adding that right after approval of the meeting agenda? If it's okay with the board, are there any other changes? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Excellent. Well, we've approved the agenda. Niels, please come introduce we all have met you in different capacities, but we just wanted to welcome you and come join us at the table. And so you can introduce yourself to the public too.
Everybody can see you.
Yeah.
We might go for a minute.
That sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. Neil Stevenson, planner, been a planner for municipalities for about 15 years, mostly in Washington State. So it's been a very long commute of 2,000 plus miles out this way. Very excited to work with the town and a lot to learn. So looking forward to it. Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, excited to have you. Where are you living?
I am living in the town of Ithaca, off 5 Mile Drive. There's a cemetery. I'm right across from the cemetery, so
Oh, okay.
Great. It's
Perfect
easy
for
to
the-
Find a place.
Yeah.
People who I know who tried to move here.
It's hard.
Kind of hard.
It is hard.
it took a while.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you found a good place.
What have you seen in the first week, 2 weeks? Working or just?
Oh, yeah, you're reflecting.
Maybe you wouldn't want to talk about it. It's not working.
Did you make it to Apple Fest is the real question. Okay.
But I did go hike on Maple, no. I'm drawing a blank. It's really close by me.
Okay.
Just to the south, off 13.
Off Buttermilk Falls area?
But
Yep.
I was thinking Butter or Maple Melt. But yeah, Buttermilk Falls, very pretty.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, point of fact, we have the highest waterfall east of the Rocky Mountains, it's Teganic, so you have to check that out. And then if you haven't seen Niagara Falls, it's not as impressive once you see Teganic. And I'm not joking when I say that. I took my kids to see Niagara Falls and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, it's not that tall. And I'm like, it's a lot of water. But Teganic Falls is very impressive. And we actually do have some water going over it right now. So you're here at a good time to make a hike. So, well, I'll just say, and I know I speak for everybody connected to the town, we are so happy to have you. It has been a long time since we've had a permanent planner and we've been chomping at the bit to get ready and going on projects. So we appreciate you being here and making the very long trek from Washington State out to us. So thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we're celebrating by having no planning board meetings or BZA meetings this month. So that's a soft transition into those committees. So thank you. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, but you don't have to.
I'll relinquish my chair back to Michael.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to open it up to privilege of the floor. Is there anybody in the public? There's nobody in the public present who I believe wishes to speak to us, unless staff is interested. Is there anybody online who would like to speak to us? I'm seeing head shaking no. Thank you very much, Linda and Liz.
No, that's the.
That's just the
pointer from
cursor.
the Cursor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Scott has worked 12 hours today doing, they've been doing paving and oiling, so I think Scott is sleepy on the other side would be my guess. I'm sorry, they're saying the meeting via Zoom is blocked by the host. Do you mind checking on that? I just got that message from Michael Boggs. I have no idea. So,
Yeah.
no, I saw it flash up. But then I was able to get in, so I didn't think it was an issue.
Wonder if it's 'cause you're.
Yeah, it could be in the hotel, it could be a block.
Caitlin, do you want to try to go on again?
Sure,
Hang in there, Wendell.
I texted him.
Oh, okay, there. It says you have unlocked meeting. There we go.
Yep, I got him. I'll let him know that he is back on. He's on the website. He should be fine. I think he'll be fine. We did so many Zoom meetings for so long. I bet he can find it. Oh, there he is.
There he is. No, that's.
No, that's Scott.
EOU highway.
There are 5 participants.
Well, I texted him. If he's not on in 5 minutes, I will reach out again. Well, I was gonna see if there are any liaison chair reports. Legislator Corman is not here, so is there, would you want to do a report from CSAC?
Yeah, I mean.
Or do you want to wait to your board
So
seat?
either way, we could do that now. I don't know, Mary, if you want to bring up what we talked about at the last meeting, much of the meeting that we had, our last meeting, we talked about, this becoming a bee friendly
Mhm.
community, that Mary had sort of spearheaded bringing information on. And she can report, she was gonna bring that to the board at this meeting, so she can do that in a minute. I'm just trying to think if there was anything else, just continuing working on the clean energy communities and climate smart communities. I, updated them on but I sent the document that the board adopted with the comprehensive plan structure and, let them know that CSAC is one of the, whatever you want to call them, stakeholder groups in the town that would put somebody on, and so we'll talk about that at the November meeting. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I
Unless you
think you
remember
mentioned
anything
something about the stretch code is being revived.
Oh, yeah,
So,
no, that's not, it's not, happening anymore. They're completely revising
Ah.
everything and
yeah,
yeah, so they took that off the clean energy communities, high impact actions.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I sort of did, so they're working on an update of that. I think it might have to do with the CLCPA and the climate community. Leadership
Oh,
Protection Act.
Thank you. I
And,
was,
yes, sorry.
didn't remember,
I-
I didn't
I
remember
never-
which
quite
acronym
right,
though.
But the scoping document that
Yeah.
we sent in comments on, and that was the draft that needs to be completed by the end of this year as part of the legislation, so the committee is working on that right now, and so maybe they're just thinking, because, and then it's supposed to be implemented by the state agencies in various ways, and so maybe that's the thinking, that it's gonna have to change anyway, and also, I think in 2023, it's a required update of the codes and the energy codes anyway, right, so I think they just decided to take it off, so yeah, so that's not, even though we did like all that work and we're partway there, that's not on the table anymore, but we thought about it and we'll be ready.
Yeah.
When it comes up,
yeah.
but other than that, I don't think there's anything, so very much.
Yeah, so anyway, I had brought to the CSAC the idea of Ulysses becoming a bee-friendly community. And that would
Bees and bees and bees.
be, yeah. And it's a
condition.
designation that encourages the town residents to carry out actions that will promote pollinator health.
Good.
And so it requires, it's through the Xerces Society, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates for pollinator health and including, bumblebees, wild bee species, of which there are about, I think, 260 in New York State alone. And the bee populations are declining, so this would require us to form a bee-friendly community committee. And I already have a couple of people that have indicated that they would like to be on that committee, but I figure an email blast from Carissa would probably result in some other people. And then the committee then would put together a list of native plants and plant suppliers for people who are interested in planting bee-friendly gardens or, in their yards, for instance. And the committee also has to plan an annual event having to do with either plantings or restoration or educational opportunities, educational events for people on pollinators. Let's see. There's $100 fee and an application. $100 annual fee, so it's $100 a year. And then the committee would also be tasked with working out some integrated pest management documentation so that people could refer to it. That would have to be on our on a page on our website for the town.
Like the list of plans would be there and.
Yeah, and the IPM suggestions and as well as a report of, what the committee has done over the year. There was something else. Oh, we have to put a sign someplace in the town that says we're a bee friend.
Yeah.
So one sign. And that's basically it.
So we thought that the CSAC thought our committee was very supportive of trying to do this, and so we thought that bringing it to the board and seeing if the sense of the board was, if we can find a committee that would be willing, to do these things, if the board would want to go forward with it, because we didn't want to, then recruit people if the board wasn't going to want to support it anyway, so.
We actually just hired a landscaper for the very thing. To improve the gardens to the pollinators.
Oh,
And it would be helpful for, the highway too, maybe to. know
Yeah,
plans,
yeah.
So.
Yeah,
And
I think it's great. My only question, not really a concern, is that this would be our 4th committee we're building this year. Which just we are not a huge place. And so my question was, do we actually, are there people, is there somebody who really wants to spearhead this either on the board, or have you identified somebody? Because it really, from an organizational management standpoint, I'd want to make sure we had somebody in place who how committees work. You have to have somebody driving the train. And I think bees are awesome, but I don't have time to drive the bee train. So I was wondering if there's a way, does it make sense to fold them in, combine them with another pre-existing committee? Or do we actually have somebody who could,
well, I'd be
facilitate
happy to
chair the
Chair
bee
the
committee? Oh,
Yep.
this is
bee committee.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
And I think
Mary.
we can find,
I think,
Or-
with Cornell and,
Right. Well, there are several
entomology and,
beekeepers.
Horticulture
in this
and,
town, So,
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Yes, I was looking for a leader.
yeah,
So Mary, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
she's a master beekeeper.
yeah.
I did not know that. Did you know mosquitoes are really important pollinators? But I
Well, you
would,
could be in charge of
I'll
the
be,
mosquito.
trust me, I feel like sometimes I'm in charge of the mosquito committee, no. But that's wonderful. If you're willing to spearhead that, I think that sounds great.
Yep.
So,
So we'll work on that. So I mean, the CSAC would, help work
Wonderful.
on it too, but we'll have the subgroup that really is gonna do the bee mean, it could be sort of part of.
Yeah, it could be a subcommittee.
But
of
we
CSAC.
definitely need, well, except that then it might exceed the number of members. we
Oh,
want to have.
right.
But we could, work together and help with the event and
Yeah.
all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And it could maybe be part of when we get to redoing the website and fixing up the CSAC part, which, has gotten old and definitely needs updating. Anyway, we talked about that with regard to fixing up the resolution and all, then it could be, I can imagine it being part of that,
Yeah,
conservation and environment in the town, so.
Well, and Michelle had the great idea of trees and bees. So,
There you
you
go.
know,
Because
because,
we have a tree.
yes,
we
there's a
have
tree
trees
committee
and bees.
and bees.
Tree and
There you are. A lot of good acronyms and.
So,
Okay.
excellent. Well,
Okay,
thank you,
great.
Mary.
Well,
That's a
we will-
great idea.
We'll report back on that
Okay,
and work
awesome.
on
Yeah.
finding people, which I think getting the committee is the next step. And then
Yeah.
there's a resolution. I guess.
Well, if you get that to me, we could do that at the board meeting on the 25th. Note that we're not gonna have, the earliest we will have another newsletter is gonna be the 28th when Carissa gets back.
Okay.
So it's on hiatus.
well, I could probably beat the bushes in other ways.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But if you want something in the newsletter, that will need to be to Carissa by noon on, she likes it on Thursday before, right? Or is it on? I would say noon on the 27th. I will,
Yeah, she's probably gonna have a,
she's gonna have a lot to do
Yeah.
when,
And I also talked to one of the people who wrote in with just interest in general interest in committees that I've been telling you, I was just
Yep.
responding to while we're working on it.
Yep.
I met with her because she wanted to know about all of the different ones. And she's an educator for cooperative extension, environmental educator. And so she seemed the most interested in terms of what her time that she would have over the next year was and all to potentially join CSAC, which
Ah.
would be great because she's got, that educator outreach.
Oh, is that,
skill set, and she's also a biologist. So, yeah, and so she might come to our next meeting, but then we
Great.
might bring another, we still have, I think, 2 spaces on that committee open, so we might bring that after she decides for sure she wants to do it.
sounds wonderful. Cool, great.
That's
Thank-
it.
Nice. Let us move then to our old business, the 2023 tentative budget discussion. So the way I was gonna, although Michael's not here, I guess.
No, he's on the phone.
Oh, he's on the phone. Okay, Michael, so you can't
He's that
vote.
little phone thing.
We can't.
You can't, we can't see you per the state requires. So if you want to vote, you have to be
You have to be seen.
you have to be on camera, but we're not voting right now. We're just discussing and you're welcome to discuss. So. There's no vote scheduled for the budget tonight. So I was gonna ask that Michael requested, and we had talked about when we were doing the line by lines. A broad overview of the highlights of each fund as we go through. So I was gonna ask Michelle to kick off doing the highlights of the A fund, and then we're gonna talk about capital reserves. And that, and the capital plan, the multi-year capital plan. So would you mind? When you're ready, you feel free to join us up here if you want to come up here next to me,
That's for the.
public also. If someone wants to join me.
Go ahead, right there, y'all.
To a chair.
I can grab one, Caitlin.
You set up and I will
Okay.
move a chair.
No, it's fine. This is all, oh, well, geez, everybody's, thank you, everybody.
Okay, well, although, what'd you say?
I'll scoot my chair.
Oh, sure. We've, as a team, we've gone through these, the budget line by line. And tonight we're gonna focus on the A fund, sort of the big picture A fund. So, starting off with just describing what the work plan is that is outlined by the tentative budget. And I'll just point out that the document was posted on the agenda. It's called the budget context document. And so I think everybody has a copy of it. If not, I have a extra, but it was available on the website as well.
It's in that packet. I printed it off.
You printed this?
I
you
printed out
guys
the
have
budget.
that?
They do. They have it.
Okay, you guys both
The
have-
budget context is
So
in your
Yeah.
file.
Everybody had one at their place.
So I'm on section C at this point, just gonna talk about the first part in the A fund. So the big picture work that's gonna be done in the A fund that's implicated by the 2023 budget is things that mostly we've been talking about for quite some time. Of course, the IT and cybersecurity upgrade, this is going to be a pretty time-consuming effort to respond to the comptroller's report from the 2021 audit. So right now we have this RFP out that is requesting strategic plan development. That'll be part of phase 1. In parallel with that work, we'll be also transitioning to a new software setup where we'll be subscribing essentially to Microsoft products annually. And this is sort of a growing pain of getting our IT and cybersecurity up to date. This will be a new annual cost, and Microsoft sort of has us between a rock and a hard place, and we have to pay it annually by user. But this will take care of the licensing issues that were outlined in the OSC audit. And take care of some cybersecurity issues as well. I do think it's important to mention that with that software transition to a Microsoft suite, there will be some internal organization systems updates, including our calendar, our shared calendar. And also, I think we'll transition to Microsoft Teams, I'm guessing, because we have that. And we'll have the licensing for it and all of that. So that's a big one. The IT and cybersecurity, that's a big one. I did want to mention that right now we have this RFP out, and there's 5 vendors, 5 different IT consultants who have said that they're intending to submit a response to that. So that I feel really good about that number. So that's all good news. More to come on that as the year wraps up. Also in the 2023 budget, there's a number of town hall facility maintenance. We've talked about this in the line by line, but the big highlights are that there was a great idea during those line by line meetings that developed around hiring a project manager, specific, somebody with facilities experience who can address some of these issues. Things pop up pretty regularly. We don't have anybody who has a job description that says you're taking care of the facilities here at the town hall. So having somebody in that temporary position as a project manager type, I think one of the goals would be to come up with we should have a standard operating procedure for this building, much like what we've been developing for Water District 3. So in my mind, we would have a standard operating procedure for all of the different systems here at the town hall. So
The systems have gotten more complicated.
yes,
And-
indeed. So besides, as we've spoken about, there's some major needs that we need to pay attention to as far as the town hall facility goes. Painting and repairing of outside helps ensure the long-term integrity of the structure, and that is past due. We definitely need to do that next year. We have a ADA compliance issue, whereas we don't have a door that's ADA compliant. We'd like to do that at the back door. And then there's some insulation work that's related to just ensuring that our overall envelope of this building is well taken care of. So also in the 2023 tentative budget, we have an increased support for the supervisor's office. This is just the A fund. As you remember, that there's another side to that position, it's the B fund. That position's open and being fill in the blank, what's the word, we're recruiting for it right now, or advertising it for it right now.
But we haven't advertised for it yet because we're tweaking. We will be.
Oh,
in
okay,
the next
gotcha,
week or
okay,
so.
so
No, the town
We're
board
working towards
approved
it.
moving towards it.
yeah,
but
working towards that.
yes.
The other thing that Caitlin and I have been in touch about in a variety of ways is trying to increase our capacity to pursue grant funding opportunities based on the laundry list of infrastructure needs that we have that we'll touch on in a couple minutes. Continued support for community groups at the retreat. We back in the beginning of August, we used the $30,000 mark for community support. So that was what was used as the funding level. And we'll go over that during, Caitlin will take over at some point and talk about that in a little bit. I would consider this year our most successful staff training year. So we're gonna continue on adhering to those requirements. And obviously, maintenance of records, the clerk's office will be continuing their work around that. We've put in this budget an annual audit, so it's very time consuming to not have an audit every year on both sides. And we've spoken about it for a couple years, and this year has our year 2 in the books in the budget. So very much appreciate the support around all of that.
So now there won't be an audit reserve, right? I mean, it'll just be an expense every year.
Right, right. And we do have a little bit in the reserve.
Okay.
Yeah, so an additional annual expense. Currently Will is expanding the recreational program to include some adult recreation, so that is a fairly low cost program to run, and so that's all great news. So just transitioning quickly and skipping ahead to section D of that document that was posted online and provided in the agenda packet. That table that's in section D is basically what's the most expensive. It's the big stuff that's coming out of our capital planning process. And as you all know, we've had a couple capital plans around for years, but this past year really does mark a greater capacity for really identifying our capital planning needs and drilling into those. Of course, you know, we're still in our infancy relatively as far as that sort of work goes, but we do have some information available here. So this is the immediate and the big high ticket items that we need to start planning for. I want to point out that the estimated current cost column, that is based on quotes or other information that we've gotten about the expense, and it's today's cost, quote unquote today's cost. So if you see something that is in 5 to 10 years, obviously we can all understand that it's going to be more expensive in 5 to 10 years. But with these known current costs in this column, it's about $3.4 million of infrastructure investments that will be needed, you know, throughout, you know, in the next 10 years. So, and then I'll just point out, hopping to section F. Sorry, I pulled this together without really, you know, it's meant as like an entire packet, and without, you know, we're just talking about the A fund today. So section F, those are the, this is a Blixie created document. These are the projected reserve balances. So I think that that's important to point out with the context of this conversation. So.
Were there any questions? I'm sorry.
Nope,
Were there any
that's-
questions? Good to. Yep, move
I'm
on.
good, yep.
Well, I was gonna see if there are any questions on that before we, like, we wanted to make sure you have the context for the multi-year capital planning, and differentiating between what we have some active numbers for based on, you know, reasonable quotes, or estimates, from today versus what we know. You know, we obviously don't want to have to fund all of these ourselves. Ideally, we won't, but that's kind of the target that we're moving towards, knowing that we have to do. And the board and the town will benefit from having a multi-year capital plan that's strategically moving us towards the best use of public resources, in my opinion. And that's the plan for the finance committee to tackle in more specific terms that was shared at the last meeting over the first, 7 months of next year, so that information is much more substantively available for the 2024 budget development.
So are you talking about something that looks like what we have for the highway department?
Yeah, and that's just, and please correct me, obviously I don't go back in the town as far as everybody else does. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first time we have that kind of multi-year planning process being developed. And so, thinking long-term seems, but if there are other planning documents that we haven't tracked down. So we'd be delighted to see them.
At least from the longer term ago, you are quite correct. It's not for lack of trying, but we could not get the information needed to do that. So
It's,
it's great that you guys are doing now. It's very important.
Who the G from this community funding?
We're gonna get to that. That's on the list. First, I wanted to deal with contingency, if that's okay to transition to that, unless there are any capital.
Where's it?
Well, Mary raised the question about contingency in the A fund. And I wanted to kind of give you an overview, Michelle and I were gonna give you an overview of what contingency comprises. So the general contingency constitutes for about $40,000. The rest of contingency is related to, should we hire another person? We have, the benefit package basically goes along with that healthcare plan in particular. So $40,000 is the general contingency estimated or put into the tentative budget. It is completely offset by fund balance. So it doesn't have any impact on the tax levy directly. So if we don't spend it, it doesn't get pulled from the I'm sorry, it comes from the unappropriated fund balance. Thank you. Did I say that incorrectly?
Appropriated?
Yeah, so it's directly offset by the appropriated fund balance.
It constitutes 3% of the A fund overall, and that excludes reserves. So that's just, that does not include reserves. So it's 3% of the A fund, the active A fund, I like. to think of it.
Excluding reserve additions.
Yep. And things that will be covered under it. I'd like to remind the board that in 2021, we had a very unanticipated legal expense related to the annexation petition that was ultimately withdrawn. That was paid for out of contingency for A fund. Should anything like that ever happen again, that's where that would come from. I'm not aware of anything, but that doesn't have any bearing on whether or not there might be. There is it our general liability insurance? That we're waiting on the general we won't have our quote for general liability for 2023 until basically after we put the budget to bed, so to speak. We have budgeted an 8% increase. We're expecting it to go up. And so that would be part of it. And then we're dealing with inflation and unexpected items. And we have moved based on the board's philosophical change since the fall of or summer of 2020 towards cutting our individual lines as close as possible. The budgeting philosophy prior, at least with previous boards, had been to pad those lines, but the board particularly in 2020 started making that transition towards scaling down how much was being earmarked for different lines. So we've tried to be as conservative as realistically possible with each individual line, with the idea being that the contingency comes from appropriated funds if we end up needing to spend it. So that's the rationale behind the 40,000. Did I miss anything big?
Well, the only other thing I would add is that, as you said, inflation really is a factor as far as how much unexpected items that come up will cost. And knowing the work that we have on our plates for the town hall facilities for 2023, for instance, I put out there in the document, the context document, was that there was an idea that came up about maybe getting a design for the parking lot that accounts for stormwater infrastructure. And so, ideas will pop up throughout the year, especially if we have that project manager. that we will want to be nimble and take advantage of. And so I also think contingency use is appropriate for, new things that pop up, like other grant opportunities. Being able to, when I say nimble, I think it really is operationally the best way to be nimble is to know that we have contingency to work with.
And the other thing is related to the facilities is that when we were, doing the planning for 2022 budget, we didn't realize we had facility issues. We had, someone come in on a friendly basis to point out some issues that we saw. We don't know, frankly, with the facilities manager coming in, and it might be a circumstance where, I know this in my private life. I don't know this in my public life yet. I know that anecdotally, it's been very difficult for a lot of people to get contractors to do smaller scale projects. And it might make sense for us to bundle something like, we know the insulation in the clerk's office has never been handled. And so it's Chris and Casey get a lot of fresh air, which can, be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's not necessarily good for the overall building envelope. It might make sense. We might find it makes sense to bundle that into a facilities upgrade in combination with the other items that would be that have been tentatively scheduled in the budget. So that's.
I'll also say that person who offered the friendly walk around has also offered to do it at the town barn. So that's another big unknown, is that we're planning on doing that walkthrough in the next couple weeks, hopefully,
Oh, great.
and before the end of the year.
Town barn isn't that old.
It doesn't.
You used to be able to get energy audits for free.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you still can, but that would be something worth doing because they look at a lot of those
Yeah.
things, and we can look into that.
Yeah.
We had an energy audit. I can say one free,
Oh, okay.
but we
They used
used,
to have,
yeah, but we used some like certified. Clean energy scheme, help fund it. But, it's harder to get just those free, services because the state isn't funding it.
okay, well, they were, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And they may well again next year, because as I say, once they work on implementing all of the greenhouse gas reduction energy goals of that law, they're gonna have to make a bunch of programs and think about what they're gonna fund and how they're gonna help things, and these municipal programs are certainly gonna be ongoing, so that might be something we can keep an eye on. and
Yeah,
see if we
I'll,
can do that.
Add it to the,
I mean, I hear about all that stuff a lot through the people I'm working
Yeah,
with, so I
right.
can let you know.
yeah, that'd be great.
So one thing just on that I guess I'd like to suggest is that we think about. I think it's a really good idea. Michael brought it up as an idea to, because we hopefully, I mean, we'll have a facilities person here getting familiar with this building, and that's kind of a shortish term thing. At least we're gonna try it for that. So we'll have that resource. So I guess I would like to see us think about doing an engineering, more engineering scales, just outline, potential plan for the parking lot this year. And so maybe, and since one of the things you mentioned for the contingency was maybe doing that, moving a little bit of that contingency money into the engineering line and having that be the intent, because then if a grant opportunity comes up, we will have that instead of having to scurry around to get it. And so I think that's a really good idea. After leaving the meeting and Michael bringing it up, then we'll have that information, and we may be able to apply for something. So I'd like to see us move however much, I don't know, is 5,000 adequate to do that? I don't know how much they charge for these things.
I don't know. I mean, I think that's probably a good ballpark number. We can always
Right.
pull more from contingency if necessary. I just give an update to the board is that I was looking at the parking lot and not being an expert, Scott, I don't know if you're still here, but I talked to Scott and raised the question of, are there some temporary, so first off, we don't have plans to replace the parking lot in 2023 anyway. It's not in the budget. But obviously we have some potholes, we have some issues. And I talked to Scott, and for less than $1,000, he's going to be able to do cold patching this season. And what I want to do is I really don't want to just spend $100,000, quite honestly, resurfacing the parking lot. If we're going to do it, I want to go after you know, green grants and really look at water, water flow and buffers and really do a high quality project as opposed to just spending $100,000 on resurfacing it. I mean, to me, that seems like not a great long-term plan, especially if we can use cold patch and
Yeah. So-
improve it.
So I know that it wasn't in the budget for this year, but I'm suggesting we think about putting some in the budget and trying to do a design, at least to think about the drainage issues and the things, and that would help inform whether we can do some more green kind of parking lot installation, and that might really help with grant funding, because those grants come, as Michelle knows well, you know, they come pretty quickly, and so having that is just, it really jumpstarts your ability to do it, so, so yeah, I'd like to see that maybe made as.
Well, about
change.
$5,000.
Yeah,
You can
so
move
just move it,
5,000.
yeah, and then make the contingency 35 instead, so. put it
Yeah.
Into engineering.
So, just a quick, logistical note about changes to the tentative budget. Between whatever we discussed tonight, I just want to get a feel for the board about how, there's columns that we can use in the actual budget document. So I'll just plan on reprinting it all and having it ready for next meeting, so you can see the differences. in
So.
there.
Go ahead.
Just as a process note, and technically, which we can do at the end of all of the changes. Technically, per state law, we should, have a resolution that states all the differences between the tentative and the preliminary budget.
So we'll plan to have a resolution that outlines every single change, so. Which is not something we used to do, but Michelle always learns something new about how we're supposed to be doing something. So Mary, what was your question?
My question was, you said that contingency doesn't affect the tax rate because you take money from the appropriated fund balance.
Mhm.
Or the money for that is in the appropriated fund balance. So if you reduce that by 5,000, is that what you said? Then the appropriated fund balance would be like 403,000.
No, I would
Or-
leave the appropriated fund balance the same.
It would
and
just, it would
still saying-
offset the engineering.
That 5,000 would come from appropriated fund balance. Opposed to affecting the tax levy.
I was saying like that there's 40,000 in contingency right now.
Right.
And Michelle had used as one particular example, potentially, since we'd have a facilities person to help with it, doing an engineering study of the parking lot options and things, so that, which I think is a really good idea, Michael had brought up, and then we'll be ready, so moving, because that could be one thing, rather than have it just all float in contingency, moving some amount of contingency, we're saying 5,000 up into engineering, saying that's the purpose of it, and then reducing the contingency by 35, so you're still
But
spending 40.
5,000, yeah, but 5,000 in engineering will be still offset by
Right.
appropriated fund balance. It will not affect. the
Right.
tax.
You're
We're
not
just-
changing contingent, the 40,000 in contingency is 35 there and 5 in engineering,
Right.
just to make the contingent, reflect the things you think you're gonna spend it on, if you think that that's an important thing to spend it on. But that still leaves 35,000.
Right, right.
Further, does that answer your questions about contingency?
Yeah, I'm
Further
still a
conversation?
little fuzzy on, the tax levy. If you have a change in the budgeted expenses. Why that doesn't affect the tax levy.
Because it's being offset by, it's still being offset by the appropriated fund.
So, the way that I philosophically look at contingency is that it's money that if you can appropriate it from fund balance, because it's not budgeted, it's not operational, it's not an annual operational cost that we know of, unless there's something that we failed to include in here. Of course, that's always a possibility, but with these expenses that maybe they're one time, contingencies meant for not regular expenses. So appropriating it from fund balance is philosophically what I would choose to do opposed to having it impact the tax levy. You know, it's like an emergency thing. It's a one-time. You would
Right.
think it's one-time expenses.
Because otherwise, in that engineering line, we're padding it with contingencies. We're not sure if we're gonna do it. Does that make sense? Because that's, I mean, moving it back into, if we put it back on the tax levy, but we're not sure we're going to do it, it increases the tax levy. And that's the kind of the philosophical model that was previously followed, that we're trying to get away from, because it's a possibility that we'll use it, but it's not a guarantee that we'll use it. So because it's not a guarantee, I think you can argue that it's a potential one time that may or may not happen.
Because fund balance isn't included in that, the tax rate isn't affected by fund balance.
Right, right.
So therefore, spending on contingency in place of fund balance doesn't increase the budget. Because fund balance wasn't in the budget in the first place.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's,
That's why it doesn't show up in the tax rate.
Are you asking a more generic question, not about contingency specifically?
yeah, I guess, you know, if the tentative budget for appropriations is 1,500, oh, it's a little different from what's on the front page, but it's close. Tentative budget 2023 is 1.5 million for expenses. Revenues, where is it? Oh, yeah, one, appropriation, so. I wonder why that's not the same number. Slightly different.
Because of that, if you add them together, the A lighting, that little four.
Oh, 435.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that number.
I see, okay, okay,
For years,
right.
same number.
So. You know, the tax levy is like. The plug, I guess.
It didn't apply.
Well, when you consider. No, just the money that you need to, you know,
To
Funds.
function.
fund the government.
40,000 contingencies there in case you go over it, and you need some extra money.
Right.
But that contingency is in the tax levy. Or
Well, she's saying that it's not,
It's being
but it's,
offset by appropriated fund balance.
well, plus some, you know, so the appropriated fund balance is like 400,000 because we have so much money in there.
Yeah, that's just one thing that's being offset by appropriated fund balance.
fund balance. You could appropriate $100,000, it won't affect the tax levy. If you want to do something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Unless-
not this year and you don't.
Unless it's during your budget process.
Right, that's
And
right.
then it will affect the tax
That's right.
levy.
But then it won't show up as appropriated fund balance, it'll show up as an expense.
In your budget process, appropriated fund balance is a revenue source,
Right.
right?
yeah,
And so you're using that one-time revenue source to offset one-time type expenses.
I mean, that's
Or that's
the
what
direction
Michelle wanted
we'd
to-
like to
yeah,
go in.
Right, well, you know, because you don't wanna, you can't be in the habit of using one-time money to fund operations.
Ongoing problem,
Right.
yes.
'Cause that's
Right.
unsustainable, right? So, but the appropriated fund balance in the budget process is a revenue source. So in this case, we're looking at contingency as being a one-time thing, or an unexpected thing.
Right.
And that's partly where that money is coming from to fund that. And so the idea is that those things don't impact the tax levy in the way that maybe inflation or other operational expenses might. That makes sense.
Yeah, if something popped up that, you know, say we forgot to add something that an annual expense into one of these funds in the A fund. that was going to be an ongoing annual expense. If we had the ability to increase the tax levy, that would be my suggestion. Say we found a new software cost that we knew we were gonna have to pay $1,000 for every year. I'm like, let's increase the tax levy by $1,000 because we know that's an operational expense.
Although you can't do that except once a year.
Right,
Right, but it just, if you were in the middle of this process. and
right. Like if
realized
tomorrow.
Yeah.
you had
Right.
forgotten that, you're suggesting that you would look at increasing taxes. to
Right.
take that, as opposed to the contingency items or other one-time items like this engineering cost that you might. set
Except that
aside.
there's so much fund balance, you could also, you're gonna spend it that. We had this, we're gonna have this discussion, that's the appropriate percentage
Mhm.
of fund balance now. So what's our current fund balance percentage?
Overall,
It's 29%, I believe, on your budget sheet.
29%.
No,
Even that's
it's
all
like
fun.
37
all funds.
But if you look at like
For the A fund, it was like.
the B
37.
fund,
I was just looking at.
the
on
fund
the
balance
doc-
is like
In total.
200%.
It's listed at.
Right.
It's on this page here.
Right. Right, but I think he was talking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but
okay. Yeah, because you can't.
I think we-
necessarily switch
I
between
understand.
them all, right? No, I know.
I think,
like the
I think
water
that's,
fund.
I think that's a very, it's not a I'm not trying to cut short that conversation. I think it's an important conversation to have, but I think it's a conversation that needs to happen in conjunction with our multi-year planning, because
Yeah.
because when we do, there's gonna be a lot of our multi-year planning really will be one-time expenditures. And so I think that we're the beneficiaries of kind of a slush fund that is that money. And, tying whatever percentage it is with a concrete plan to utilize it. I think they need to happen in tandem as opposed to in isolation. So, but you're raising what we want the finance committee to really chew on, starting in January, essentially. So, because we want to have those substantive conversations completed before the next budget cycle. And I finally feel like that we have the capacity on the board, we have the capacity and the staff to actually make that happen. And I don't have to be at the committee meetings, which is just even out of almost.
All right.
Anything else on contingencies before we move on to the community funding partners discussion, which is on page 9 of your document, if you want to look ahead.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I don't quite understand.
So the way it worked in terms of putting the document together is that, well, let's back up. So at the board retreat, the board earmarked very tentatively earmarked approximately $30,000 for community funds. And after that, Carissa went out and did our advertisement. This is for the public. This is the second year we've done this. This is not how it used to be done. We've moved now towards an application process. And Carissa collected the line, or she collected the applications. We had a little subcommittee. Roxanne and I were on the subcommittee on it. She circulated the applications. At that point, so you see my line of my recommendations of funding allocations. Is the 5th column over from the left. Sure. Yep.
So why did you take it about the?
Well, the only reason I did that is because I didn't have an application from them when I reviewed it. So, so we are recommending holding flat for 2023, which would be $2,500. So it was not a me personal thing against Gadabout. I just didn't have an application to review at the time that I was given the applications. So in the tentative budget, they are scheduled to be flat from 2020.
Why did you bump light from 1 to 3?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
That's kind of.
They have asked for more money every single year, and they've been providing more services. They were scaled down in COVID time because they couldn't actually perform services. They're providing more services. That has been basically, it was my recommendation. If you want to scale them down.
Well, what services, what is the scope?
They do events, and they also do, I can pull up their application
I
too.
mean, I know they do.
They do here, and they also do tax preparation at the library for seniors at our local library, is one of the services they provide. I can pull up their application if you give me a sec. And I'm happy to go through it line by line with you. They've been requesting money for a while. Even with my allocations, even with the full allocations, we were still coming under budget. So I didn't see a,
Yes, but if you add in, I'm not arguing against
Yeah.
lifetime being higher, but if you add in I'm sorry to interrupt you, the GAT about 2,500, then we're at 32,667, right?
no, we're at 27,142 in the tentative budget. First, second, third line on the left.
Oh,
the
I was
tentative
adding up the
budget.
request, I'm sorry. I got it
Yeah,
wrong.
no, I did not suggest funding all of them. The one
So you would put 25, so it would be 24,642 plus 25, right?
right,
Because
2,500, so that
because
comes,
Gadabout's not in that line, okay.
it's
yeah.
in, but it's already shown, it's in the, you can see it in the
Yeah.
third line to the left, it's in
Yeah.
the tentative budget.
Okay,
The tentative budget has
yeah,
allocations
it's
coming
over
to
there. Oh, I see.
27,142.
We're going in this, I got it,
Yes.
yeah.
Trumansburg after school.
Yeah, what's that?
That's new.
all about?
That is, so that is a program that's been in existence now for a few decades. They used to be actually the after-school program at the school. They for 2 or 3 years now, they have been located at in the upstairs facilities of the
Presbyterian.
Presbyterian Church. And they have a waiting list. They provide after-school care for 3 hours to elementary school students in particular. I think they go up to 4th or 5th grade,
They do some of those.
They
At
do
least
middle,
used to do
yeah,
those.
they used to go up to like 6th grade, I
Yeah.
think.
and they might still, and I honestly, I don't know off the top of my head. We would constitute a very small portion of their budget, but they're one of those places that there more people want to be in than can actually get in, and we have childcare challenges in our community, just a reduction. There's actually been a reduction in service provision in Ulysses since COVID happened. And they serve a number of economically underserved children who all are in the Trumansburg School District. So you'll see them crossing the road. So around 2:55, you can see them crossing right in front of the library, and there's a
Right in
whole,
front of my house.
yep, they walk right by your house every day. And I can look up, if anybody has other questions, I can answer while I look up Lifelong. I can do that while I'm talking to you.
I had personal experience with Trumansburg after school program. I mean, we pay what we needed to pay, but I think it was incredibly valuable to the people that were there. And it was well done, and it was, I think it's definitely worth supporting if we're having, childcare. Lack of availability, that really helps people who can't pick their kids up right after school hugely.
Well, and it was one of those things too, that it was pretty small.
Yeah, it's like a safe space.
Winterfest is 2022 allocation, we have nothing, we just gave them $1,000.
Right, so that comes out, so we're kind of switching, we're actually asking for them to now participate in a funding request in advance. That has always come out of and it will for this year, it's in our vouchers today, right?
Yeah.
For, because I went through them earlier today, but as soon as I said that, I wanted to double check that I wasn't incorrect. That always comes out of our celebration line, so it's budgeted for. But for increased transparency, we asked them to put in an application.
I think at this time, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know, I don't think they submitted.
They did submit an application.
No, last year, because I don't think they thought it was gonna happen.
Who does Winterfest? The chamber?
Now a
Village.
committee. It's
It's
a
the
committee.
village events committee.
Cynthia Menino's in charge of it, I think. And then they have a committee that was named in the vouchers, a couple of village board members.
So talk about a new point.
So New Park applied for $6,000 in funding for their youth musician program, where they bring in students to they basically in September, they have a 3-day chamber concert event that they host, and they were requesting $6,000 to fund student musicians. The reason I didn't recommend it for funding is because there was no specificity that the student musicians would actually come from Ulysses. It was just any of their student musicians, and they didn't actually clarify that it would be local students. And I would be very much in favor of supporting something that was specifically helping.
Are they nonprofit?
I was gonna ask the same question.
They are in the process of, they are not, their business is not, they're in the process, and they told us in the application, they're in the process of spinning out the chamber music component into a not-for-profit, but they're not-for-profit status right
So
now.
until they are.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Right, well, that,
until
I agree, I mostly just agreed with what Caitlin did, so I put another column there, but I thought that for the same reason.
But the conservative fine arts, you bump $3,100 from our allocation. to 5,000.
They've increased a lot of their programming. I mean, I think some of it, the reflection is that I think it made sense in COVID times where there was a restriction in community activities. To me, it made philosophical sense. They're doing less programming. There's a component of that. These were basically my recommendations. So
I'm just asking you.
yeah, so my thinking they're doing a tremendous amount of increased, their programming has increased, their programming levels are back to pre-COVID period. And because of that, I think they provide a great service in our community. To me, it seems like
Is the village giving some money?
I don't know, that's a great question, I'm not sure. I don't follow the village budget that closely. to that level.
I was looking at it today. The village does fund the farmer's market, the historic society, and I believe Meals on Wheels. So as a village resident, I'm getting hit twice. Funding these. I'm gonna take it up with the village board, maybe they should be just funded by the town.
Doesn't the
Conservatories in.
town
the
have
village.
some kind of an agreement with the conservatory to be able to use that space? I thought. that
There might have been
Liz
an informal
Had
something.
said that, yeah, I don't know, I thought that there was something,
What is it?
because we don't
Use-
have like a community
Larger.
space. I
Huh.
was pretty sure I heard that, I mean, maybe it was just informal, I thought. I'd heard Liz say that.
What isn't on here is the rec program.
It's not funded through the same,
Where is it from?
the
Where's our funding?
funding is in the A fund, but it's
It's the rec
mean,
program,
yeah.
it's on A 7020 in the.
yeah, it's not a community. The rec program is our
It-
department, so
Right, it's
we
the
don't.
Department of the.
No,
it's
no, I
our
don't mean
town.
all that. program.
Oh, you mean Trumansburg Community Rec?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, they didn't request any money.
But they didn't.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like,
No.
we don't fund our departments that way. I was very confused. Yeah, no, they will be presenting to us next town board meeting now.
And the rec partnership is in the rec. Where's the rec partnership?
Rec partnership is
In the,
It's an assigned,
an assigned fund.
okay,
It doesn't actually go to them, it just gets
no, it goes to
set
the county,
aside.
right?
Did all these others that were funding present? Answer your request?
The only one that did not was that it is the American Legion. We have been funding them at the same rate for like at least a century. It's not really been a century, but it's been a very long time. And they use the $450 or 500, I'm sorry,
Or 75.
they do it for the flags at the cemetery Memorial Day. And they do it every year. They did not submit an allocation. I felt that they've been faithful partners. It's all volunteers. So I didn't.
But the rec thing, you think that's an oversight that they did a request go out to them?
They were part, yeah, they're part of they're part of it, I think. And we can certainly ask them. It
Not
went
that I'm-
out,
It's not, I'm saying we should do it.
right.
I'm just saying it's struck. Looks like an oversight, because normally we would be there.
They didn't ask for funding last year.
They did.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh, they did?
And we ended up putting it in
The
a
contingency.
reserve in the assigned fund.
So it's in a reserve somewhere.
Yeah, it's in an assigned fund in the A fund, which we know the balance of. And if I remember correctly, the conversation went that once they get a little further down the road, we can provide that money to them. But they are still in major development mode, so we'd like to, I think we were waiting to see something that we can chew
Yeah.
on.
That's
Yeah.
assigned village rec Is that, is
Um,
that what you're talking about? It's like
that's-
$5,000?
No, it's the community, yes, the A26, A236, the A915.7. It's got just over $6,000 and we added 2,500 in the 2022 budget to it, so we've got $6,000 set aside for that organization. Which spending out of assigned funds is by board resolution.
And so this is the balances of those. This is
All right, this is the budget,
That's the budget, right?
so it's not gonna be put in.
It may not show there.
Right.
So what is the sentiment of the board? I mean, we can keep lifelong flat. If you want to keep lifelong flat, that's
I
fine.
just want to make sure they're providing enough service, you know, and this is a great organization. nothing wrong. So,
I thought that I did read, they did the tax prep stuff. Did you find that?
I did, I was looking for it and now I can't find it.
Yeah, that is actually through lifelong, although
Right.
they do get IRS funding for that.
They get IRS funding.
But
But they still have to administer to find the people and send them out here and everything,
train them and whatnot.
train them, yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
I don't-
other than that,
I mean, we're
they,
still under the.
I
theory
used to
that we
teach
thought-
an exercise class
Yeah,
for seniors,
yeah.
at Juniper Manor. And I think somebody's teaching like 3 days a week.
I think it's not that much, and I think we're
I
still
didn't think
under
it was
the
that much. but-
30,000.
Well, we're under the budget because the
Yeah.
rec thing is in. Under normal means.
No, I don't think it normally is.
It was.
It was last.
Past
year.
2 years,
Yeah.
I think.
Oh.
Well, I was excited that I was spending under
That's-
$30,000. I thought
Yeah.
there was some.
I'm
gold
okay
stars.
with it. Do you want to check with the rec people?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, they will be with us. They are gonna present at our next town board meeting.
Which is a little weird since it's right at the budget time, and I'm sure they're gonna make a request.
No, actually, they're coming to talk to us mostly about zoning. Our zoning limitations and also, talk about the event that they just had this past weekend. Because they were kind of using this event that they had at the fairgrounds. It was a day of recreation activities from 12 to 5. That as kind of a new kickoff phase and keep us updated. I've been having meetings with them every couple of months all year. And they've been in conversation with INHS about developing some of the property up at the former Obel site. And that's kind of a long ways out. INHS was initially interested in providing more land for their campus than they're now looking at doing. But it's kind of, for INHS, it's not a high priority to fund, to provide the rec services or provide rec facilities. And so they're looking at having a secondary campus in the town because it's the only other place, there's no land. I mean, there's no village land that they can develop into rec fields, but they're gonna come talk to us about the zoning challenges they're running into, which inhibit them actually purchasing land. They don't want to purchase land that they can't put a field on. And so that's kind of what they're gonna come talk to us about, is what I've been told. It's not a funding request at this
Which I
juncture.
find odd.
I think they're trying to figure out. I think they want to have a very specific plan that they're gonna fundraise for. And what they would like to do is do field development. But short of our zoning allowing them to do field development, they can't go out for a campaign. I am sure they're gonna come to us and want the money we have in reserves. For them and ask for more money.
So can I just ask, is 2,500 the amount that was put in before? Am I reading that right for the rec?
6,000.
Yes, but I mean the amount
In
that we put in a
2022.
year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if it so happens between now and when we decide to do the preliminary budget vote, we want to add 2,500
We'd
to
still
them,
be
we're
under it.
still under 30,000, so
Mhm.
maybe we
Yeah,
can just.
and I'm
move
not saying
on.
we should, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, no, and we could touch base on that at our meeting on the
Right,
next meeting in
Right, so
October
we
because we're
have
still in the
space
budget
to
time.
do it, and so I think maybe. It's.
I would add, say that depending on how the board is looking at this community funding stuff, goes back to the appropriated fund balance versus tax levy, that if we want to have, if we want to be able to continue to fund at this level, it should affect the tax levy if we
But
decide
all
to
these things
increase it.
do affect.
Right, yeah, so if we do add, we would be adding to the tax levy is would be my suggestion at this point. Unless we want to consider, I think that the.
We could
the
also look at it
sentiment-
as capital reserves, because they're looking at reserves for. I mean, that's how we've allocated it to reserve funding, right?
Because it's sort of, I mean,
But the town would own.
right, well,
Tax can-
so. If we're looking at funding community programming. And we want to keep it at a constant or, steady level year after year. If we're going to increase the number that we have.
Well, I think though there's a difference between this, because they're not actually looking for funding to administer a program. They're looking for funding to the best of my understanding, to purchase something.
Yeah, you could argue either way.
Right, and
For
so I could see us saying that we could make the argument that we're trying to allocate. Money for a purchase as opposed to what LifeBunk's doing,
Right,
which
Yeah.
is ongoing service provision. And maybe we could make a distinction on that, that we could put money towards their reserve fund.
Yeah.
Cause we have a reserve fund for them, right? The tenants, it's $6,000 set aside for
right.
a pool or whatever. They could put
But
money
also-
towards
And
that.
That could buy much
That.
pool.
We're gonna have
Some
a lot more
chlorine.
space once, Camp Gordon.
We are, but there's gonna be some sizable limitations. On. I mean, they're looking at 30 acres. For a complex, so they can have football, they can have baseball, they can have soccer. There could be a variety of activities, they can have an actual building to do indoor things in the winter. The way I would imagine is that I would like to Camp Barton, I think there's gonna be a lot of demand for Camp Barton either way, and there's a limited amount of field space, I mean.
And
Yeah,
parking. I think
and so-
parking's a big issue in this whole thing.
And so we actually, initially I was wanting to be very sensitive to TCR, coming in with Camp Barton and saying, we see these as complementary resources when you develop a campus, as opposed to ones in competition with each other. We can provide swimming at the lake. They're never going to be providing a pool at that facility in our lifetime. So, but it's, again, they're gonna come in and talk to us, I think, about their plan of the direction they'd like to go. And I think they will ultimately want to hear feedback from the town board about our willingness to support them developing some facilities in the township. So, I mean, I don't think they need an answer at that meeting, but.
Well, I think it would be great to understand what the actual needs are, what the actual limitations are with the current fields available, just everything about it. That would be super helpful. So I'm really glad that they're gonna come and do that.
Yep.
I think that would be great.
I think they complement, I mean, actually, for that meeting, I'm also gonna provide you with copies of the comprehensive plan. Objectives that are at the back. Because I think there's a lot that we could just duplicate from the existing comprehensive plan, because there's a lot of limitations on rec facilities, so. Anyway,
So
That-
can we go with this and say that there is space for 2,500 and still we're under 30,000? And
For the rec program or.
well, just for community funding, is this okay to move on?
we're gonna have to
It's
play
at
around with.
27,142, and then
Yeah.
there's still a
Okay,
space for
coming out.
2,500 if that makes
appropriated
sense.
funds, Offset by appropriated.
And it's
Yeah.
still under
Okay.
330, which we thought was good.
We're gonna offset that by appropriated fund balance, if that's okay with the board,
I think for
because
this
So,
time, yeah.
so let me understand, so will that increase the appropriated fund balance amount?
By
I thought you were
2,500 if
arguing-
you
I thought you
decided
were
to
just
do it.
arguing against it.
Well, what I wasn't.
But we didn't decide
You were
even to do
arguing
it
that
yet.
should come
It's a
from
maybe.
the tax levy.
So what I was saying is
no, I
that
wasn't, she
if
was.
philosophically, she's convinced me since. Philosophically, if the board wants to provide a certain level of community funding year after year. That it should be reflected in the tax levy, but with the nature of this community programming. Addition of this 2,500 is for a one-time expense. So,
And it's also, we're not gonna write them a check. We're gonna
Right.
transfer, it's gonna be a bookkeeping
You're not
transfer.
talking about all of this from. the fund.
No, just this one, because it's actually just going to move
Into
from
reserve.
appropriated fund balance into our reserves.
Right.
For the line that we already have created. as opposed to them, right, everybody else is gonna get a check written. We're not gonna write a check for them. So is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome,
So another 25.
yes.
Oh, so we're just putting it in,
Yeah, it's
assuming that they want it.
so it's
I would
not
assume
actually
they would-
part of this funding, it's
something else.
No,
it's
Yeah.
what we did last year.
it'll show as an addition.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're duplicating 2022. Thank you. Okay, so we can move past that. And so did you want to talk about ARPA?
I do.
Okay,
Thanks. So I brought up before last time, as you recall probably, that, we have this outline which we got on 9/23 from Michelle of the budget officer requested ARPA funds use sort of an outline overall. And so, and I was advocating, thinking about spending, not using ARPA funds for all of this in the 2023 allocation, because I'd like to, it goes back to community and what else we might be able to use these one-time funds that we didn't expect to get that are supposed to help us with COVID on, and just having some more community conversation, which we're going to be having with the comp plan listening sessions and the water needs and other things like that. I mean, I can think of a lot of things we could think about that could help some portion of this community, and maybe even recreation is one of them if that rose to the top. At any rate, I was suggesting it on this chart, really, if we expended everything the way this is outlined through 2023 and 2024, we would end up with only $10,000 that we didn't spend on something like that we've already outlined here. Most of which is upgrades, 35,000 of it is for what, 400 is for Water District 3. 106,250 is for the town hall in 2023. That includes the IT, the painting, the ADA. 95,000 estimated would be the town hall and capital in 2024 for the parking lot, but we'll look at that and hopefully we can get a grant for that, but we need to think about it. And then 75,000 is for the comp plan, which assumes no DEC grant, and that's over 2023 and 2024. 10,000 is in it, if I understand it correctly, for 2023, and 75 would be in 2024 to get the comp plan done. So I would like to see us just look at some of this a little bit differently, and I know that there was some sense that people didn't want to, so I was suggesting for the town hall work in 2023, what I suggested at the last meeting was that whole $106,000, we didn't use ARPA funds, we hold the ARPA funds and see if there's another use for them, and we put less in the capital reserve and the repair reserve, which is slated to be a total of 270,000 this year. So I heard, what people were saying there about needing, to really improve the capital reserves. I feel like this is capital things, but in further thinking about this, I guess I would like to suggest that so that we can still hold some ARPA funds and see if something rises up that, and there are ideas, we could talk about them at another time, but that we fund the town hall repairs for 2023, which is 31,250 with offset by fund balance, and reduce the amount that goes into the repair reserve by that because we're repairing things. We use the IT ARPA funds, the 75,000 for the IT upgrade, which I was arguing against before. That we do the engineering study for the parking lot, which we already talked about and agreed was a good idea. And then, so that would basically just add 31,000 to the 10,280 that's estimated to have for ARPA funds. But then I think I'd like us to talk about, and I know this isn't the A fund, but the comprehensive plan, I don't think we should, I don't see why we need to use ARPA funds for the comprehensive plan, because the B fund has a fund balance in it that even if we used if we didn't get the DEC grant and we used fund balance in the B fund, we would still have like 40% of the total budget, more than 40% of the B fund budget in fund balance. And if we up that from, if we use the 32 that's in there for this year, if we got the grant, because we split it over 2 years and then funded the rest in 2024, again, out of that fund balance, which is pretty large. And I remembered Michelle saying at the meeting that one of those budget line by line meetings that she thought that the B fund reserves were pretty fully funded and good as they are. So we don't need, like we're talking about in the A fund, there's a lot of, things that haven't happened over time that we need to build up the A fund reserve, but we don't really need to build up the B fund reserves. And so we have the money in fund balance, I think, unless there's something I'm really not understanding about all these numbers, to do the comprehensive plan with that, if we don't get the DEC grant. And so that would then free up $75,000 more, and that would leave us with about $116,000 in ARPA funds in 2023 and 2024 before it has to be spent, that we could potentially use for something else. Once we think some more about it, we listen to the community some more, we look at what possible things there might be. And I do have some things from hearing what others have done or thought, but that's not for now. I'm just advocating that we don't earmark all that money for repairs and things and for the comprehensive plan that we have other money for in the B fund. So, that's what I'd like to do.
Can I ask a question though? I just want to make sure, Michelle, can you correct, right now, we're not using any ARPA funds allocated for comprehensive plan in 2023, is that correct?
Right. It's
So,
but it's written on this chart here as 75,000.
right, but we're not actually spending any money from ARPA. We're not anticipating spending any ARPA money for comprehensive plan in 2023.
This says
Right.
2023, 2020.
We're doing the comprehensive plan update in 2023
And
and 2024,
Right.
but in the current tentative budget, there's no ARPA offset for comprehensive planning.
Right, so this is partly a philosophical commitment on the ARPA funds. It's partly reducing by 31,000, my request here, to put the repairs on fund balance in the A fund and put that much less in the repair of the capital reserve, 31,250 out of 270,000. But I just philosophically would like to revise this a little if the board was willing and say that we're not using ARPA funds for the comprehensive plan. We're using either the grant or the fund balance in the B fund over the next 2 years. And in this year, we have, if we got the grant, I think you put in 32,000 if we got the grant and 10,000 otherwise. So if we didn't get the grant, the way the current budget is written in the B fund, we would only have $10,000 to work on the comprehensive plan and get a consultant. And that is not enough based on the timeline we have and all. So I think we should leave the 32,000 in, because that's scaled over our timeline, I think, to how much we thought we'd need this year versus next year for a consultant. Is that right, Michelle?
Yeah,
Right, so the next year would be, well, there's 42,000 in here, and so then the next year would be like 30,000 more to finish it, the way the timeline goes. So I guess I'm suggesting that 32,000, instead of it being state aid planning studies, you could leave that line empty for now. If we get that money, then we can spend it there, but we put that in comprehensive plan.
We hear
And-
you. I think we got.
Well, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood exactly what I'm suggesting.
Does everyone understand?
Yeah.
I think we all understand.
And then we add the fund balance up by 32,000.
So what do you think of it?
So are we talking specifically about the comprehensive plan? Because there was I just want to make sure that there was a lot of things there that I won't be able to capture from memory if required. So specifically speaking about the comprehensive plan right now. versus the suggestions about the A fund.
That's what I was
Okay.
trying to say.
All right, so you're saying to increase fund balance appropriation by
By
the 32,
32.
and then,
Take it out of the state aid planning
Yeah.
studies as a revenue because we don't know that we're getting it yet.
right,
And if we do get it, great, then we don't have to
Yeah.
use the fund balance.
Yeah.
And then I'm further asking as a philosophical commitment that we edit this sort of planning document to not use any ARPA funds in 2024 for the comp plan. So that means 75,000 of ARPA funds is there to potentially use for something else that we find and come up with. And we use fund balance and or some DEC grant money if we get it to pay for the comprehensive plan update. So that's what I'm suggesting in the B fund.
So what would show up as being spent out of ARPA funds or planned to be spent is the water district stuff
Right, which is
And-
30 something thousand,
and
35.
the parking lot.
The parking lot for now, I
The,
mean,
the parking lot is just, and like I said, this
it's
is
just a whole.
it's
Well,
a
that's
whole-
2024. so
right,
it's-
and I don't want to spend it on it. We're gonna go find the money.
Right.
Like, it's just, so this is just a holding spot because it's something we do need to do.
And if we can't find it and then we need to do it, it's there, but I don't see that we need to spend $75,000 of ARPA funds on the companies.
We do.
And so I'd like to change that. Put in the 32 this year and additionally amending what I was,
So we're taking.
Reducing the repair reserve by
31.
31,000.
Can we split those two apart?
Right.
Because I want to have a conversation on, I am not in favor. I will come out as very strongly not in favor of reducing capital investment or capital reserve funding at all. So, but let's have the comprehensive planning conversation, because that's a different conversation. Before I pick up that one.
I think, specifically about the use of appropriated fund balance for the comprehensive plan in 2023, I think that is a great idea.
And 2024, if we have to.
Right. So
I don't see a
replacing,
downside.
no, there isn't. I
We
think
have
that's
a
fine.
lot of unappropriated fund balance.
That's fine.
Yeah.
In the B fund.
Let's do that.
So that if maybe we can like redo this chart a little too, like. So that's taken
If you
out
wanna take the paving and take it out.
as our.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I
would
think,
love to.
I
take it
think having a holding place, because I don't want to forget that we need to handle it one way or the other, and with the idea being. We're not gonna take a vote and say, we're allocating $100,000 to the parking lot tonight. This is just let's keep this at the forefront. Because what I don't want to have happen is it falls off the agenda, but my bigger issue related to. I'm looking at responsibility for tentatively $3.4 million in upgrades that we know are gonna need to happen between the next 5 to 10 years. And I think we need to I think it's in the best interest of the taxpayers to consistently putting money in the reserves for capital expenditures. So we're not in a position, we're not leaving a board 10 years from now with some kind of capital repair that they have to do
Yeah.
with insufficient reserves. So that's why I don't want to pillage the reserve allocations in order to pay necessarily for these two other items.
So this leads to the other conversation we have to have about 1% fund balance.
Right.
Because if it's at 29 and we come to 20, that 9% can go to the capital reserve.
Right, but I don't think sitting around this table, I
Yeah, I'm
don't
not
think
saying
that,
we
yeah,
should do it
right. No, and I
Just
agree,
Clarifying. what our
absolutely.
Task is in the finance.
So what I have, so I have a recommendation with wild hair. What if, the reality is we're not going out tomorrow to ask for bids on the exterior painting and repair, and we're not going out tomorrow to ask for bids on the ADA compliant door. What we'd like to do internally is have a facilities person who's helping with that process. What if because right now, currently, those items are in the 2023 budget, but they're offset by ARPA funds, so there's no tax levy implication. What if we pull them? We get a facilities person, and then we can decide in 2023 how we're gonna go ahead and handle those issues, but we could pull those right now from the budget with no tax levy implication.
What are you pulling?
pull the ADA compliant back door and the town hall exterior painting and repair. Pull that from the budget. And then actually bring a facilities person in. And we can relook at, in the context of, it might make very good sense to pull it out of fund balance, but I want the finance committee to look at fund balance substantively before we start pillaging it. And then if you might decide it's,
The word
I'm
pillaging.
not talking about pillaging anything.
Pillaging isn't a good word.
well, I think it's spending without having strategically examined best use and practice. And I want best use and practice to come out of the finance committee. We can always come back and pay for it out of ARPA, or we can pull it out of
Yeah.
fund balance. How do we feel about that?
Better
Is it
than pillaging.
better than pillaging?
Right.
Strategically expending money, because we're not gonna go, on January 1st, I can guarantee you, we're not going after and buying these things. We don't have the capacity to.
Do what?
We're not gonna go out on January 1st to, put out a request for, exterior painting and backdoor compliance. So I'd like to get a facilities person in first. In that amount of time, maybe the finance committee can look at percentage of allocations we should be.
Can't believe he's still here.
He's scintillating.
I just would offer a thought to that, which I think it's a good idea to do those things. And my suggestion was basically to leave the 220,000 in the capital reserve added for the year, which would take us from 50,000 to 270,000 in the capital reserve in 1 year. I'm looking at this, 220 is what is proposed in the budget to add to the capital reserve.
To this to the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, not just this building, it's all A fund, which includes the highway.
But it's 220,000, so I'm not, I backed out of saying we take anything out of that. We put that in, and the current repair reserve has $49,424, $385 in it, 49,000. We didn't put anything in last year. We'd still be putting, if we left those things in the budget and paid for them, we would still be putting $18,750 in the building repair reserve, which increases it by what, 25% or more than that. So
So
it would be up to 60,000, the repair reserve. I don't think that's pillaging. I don't think that's underfunding. These are repairs that need to happen. And so
And actually,
still
we're
think,
making repairs, right?
yes, we're making repairs. And so maybe there are less things there need to be done. And we'd be adding $18,000 to 49,000. We'd be up at 60,000 for repairs. And then we'd be up at 270,000 for capital in a change in 1 year. So I don't see it as pillaging. I don't see it as irresponsible spending. I think it's good to do those things. And I think I would like to see us do it that way and take it out of thinking that it would be used, agree that if ARPA funds will not be used for that, and that we will talk to the public, think some more, the board next year about what else we can do for the community with those funds. I think it's enough money. It's not, I don't think it's irresponsible. We didn't put anything in this year.
Well, I
And
also,
we'd be putting in, and we
Okay.
have the same
Okay.
amount of
Okay.
fund
Got it.
balance,
Got it.
and we'd be putting in 19,000 next.
I think it's also incorrect to say it's irresponsible to pay for an ADA compliant door with ARPA funds. I mean, I don't think that's
I didn't
irresponsible.
say it was irresponsible.
No, but you were implying that it's not irresponsible to do what you're suggesting. I'm also suggesting there's no sense of irresponsibility associated with it. So the ADA compliant door, I think you can argue that it's repairs to do the exterior painting and repair. I mean, is it repairs to replace the door?
Yes.
Could be.
Yeah,
Sure. No,
depends, is it broken?
The door is not broken, no. It's, what do you think, Michelle?
So just to recap, what I think Roxanne's saying is that instead of offsetting ARPA for the painting and repairing in the back door, those are the two items.
31,250, yes.
Yeah. And not in adding to the repair. So,
And adding only 18,750 to the repair. Not 50.
yeah, I mean,
What will that leave our repair fund at?
Well, it's
Because
right-
we're gonna have sizable repairs to this structure, not in 5 years. We need to do facilities investments here.
Well, that's what I was saying, that's 49,423 is what you have now, and then you'd add almost 19,000 to that. So you'd have like 68,000.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, when I look at what's coming up here, as far as, you know, that $3.4 million mark, and hopefully we can find grant to do some of this work, but it's really unknown what these expenses are gonna be. So I think any additions to reserves are good additions. You know, we're like we've spoken about, our multi-year planning and our capital planning still are in a fairly infant state that, making, you know, when we got those ARPA funds, I really do see it as a little bit of a planning relief valve for us, that we have some catch up to do with our capital planning, and there is a lot of investment coming up, so. Yeah, you know, I don't philosophically disagree with what you're proposing, Roxanne, but I do, you know, my gut is just saying that we have a ton of infrastructure and capital costs coming up, and I think that, for it to not really impact the tax levy in the next couple of years, I think that ARPA funds use is a responsible use, for, you know, to use these capital, to use for capital planning. Just because to me, it's like one big question mark out in the future about, how this is all gonna shake out. So, you know, this is what I'm seeing as the most immediate, upcoming financial, need for the town. And so it's hard to have a firm opinion, except for like, hey, I know we've got big costs coming up, and we have this one-time money that, you know, a lot of this capital infrastructure stuff is technically one-time money if the, useful life is 50 to 100 years, for instance. So, yeah, like I said, we have some catch up to do, and I think that ARPA funds helps soften the growing pains with that catch up. So,
Well, how does the rest of the board feel? Lexi, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just thinking about what you were all saying, and I'm thinking about what other communities are doing and how they're approaching the use of ARPA funds. It's challenging, because there's a limited amount of time. And, sometimes, you know, so having a process, if you're going to do that, to really gather that data and think about what the priorities are, has to happen quickly as far as those processes go. Because yeah, I mean, just in terms of being able to plan and have the money committed within the time frame. Not that there's no time, but it's just interesting to observe what communities are doing, because I think everybody's struggling with it. And a lot of municipalities are just struggling in general. And so trying to figure out how to best benefit the community, but also make sure that the municipality itself can operate in a reasonable manner to serve its constituents. So some people are doing facility upgrades because often there are no grant funds for facilities like this. You know, there's grant funds for other kinds of things, but for general municipal stuff, there's often. So anyway, but then there are other folks like the county who's done that grant fund, and other folks are doing more communities. I mean, it's just, it varies. It varies. So it's a tough one. I do think accessibility though, and building accessibility is something that's important in general. Accessibility to services in general.
I totally think we should do that more than doing against.
Well, I mean, if you're really gonna put away $3.4 million,
Maybe. I mean, realistically,
daunting task.
right. I mean, some of that's gonna be offset, but some of it's not gonna be guaranteed. Like we're hoping that we can go after, one of the items on there is a generator, $20,000 estimated generator for the highway barn. We'd like to go after a FEMA grant. If we don't get a FEMA grant, we still need to get those generators. I mean, it's the fact that we don't have generators, it's a looming crisis. So it's one of those things that Scott just texted me that he's falling asleep. But he starts his day earlier. And goodbye, Scott. It's already gone. Well, if you're watching afterwards, good night, Scott. You know, it's one of those things that, yeah, we'd like to get some money, but we're trying to cushion the blow. I'd like to think about who's coming behind us and leaving them. We were the beneficiaries of having a robust fund balance, and I appreciate my predecessors. I'd like to leave my descendants with successors. Thank you. 'Cause it's not descendants.
Not the same.
Oh my God.
Unless the whole family's gonna be.
Oh, Lord, I hope, no, I think I'm actively discouraging that. But my successors with, our successors with, the money, at least they need to help facilitate a process and offset a cost. I don't think we're gonna get to the 3.4 million, but I'd like to start at least moving us in a planning direction to start socking away in a responsible manner to soften those blows that are coming eventually. So it just becomes a philosophical question. If you want to pull it
I
from,
think the doors, ARPA funds are fine, is totally fine for a back door.
and then go for, the maintenance funds,
Yeah.
the maintenance reserves for the
For the
painting.
painting
I'm
and-
fine with that compromise.
And take the comprehensive plan out and hope we get the grant. If not, we'll have it.
Yeah,
in the
And
reserve
yeah,
system.
worst comes to worst, we can always reallocate.
Yeah.
our
or,
funding.
you know, there's still money in ARPA. We may think harder about it and
And the
but
B
change-
committee might need something. I
Yep.
mean,
gonna need a sign.
As Blixie was just saying, though, it's kind of I see it as a bit of a philosophical thing, because if you're going to spend it on something, you need to gather the information and think about it. And so if you don't know if you're gonna have the money, you're not gonna even try to gather the information. You're just gonna sort of hope you have money left over at the end and spend it on something. And I don't think that what I'm talking about is what Mary just said, which is that, oh, well, maybe, yeah, use it for the door and whatever, and maybe we'll have some ARPA money left. And then, we can spend it on something else, but the timeline, I'm reflecting on what Blixie said, is short. And so if the town board wanted to try and spend some time next year, half the year, discussing what else might be needs as we hear input from the public and what else we could do to serve the public with the ARPA funds, we won't do it if we're just going to wait and think that we might have money left over at the end. So it's kind of a philosophical commitment thing as to what you're gonna do with it. And it sounds like the majority of the board just wants to spend it on repairs, so.
You're making
go for it.
assumptions.
What do you mean?
You're making assumptions. You don't know. I mean,
What do you mean?
Michael hasn't weighed in on those things. I
Right,
said spend 11,000 on the door, not 300,000
no, the door's not, I'm not talking about 300,000.
or 200, whatever you.
right, so I think.
I'm generally agreeing with you, but it's hard to agree with you. It's hard to get agreement.
So
Why?
Rich, if I understood correctly, you're suggesting that we pay for the ADA compliant door with ARPA funding.
Yeah.
You're suggesting we pay for the exterior painting and repair out of the maintenance fund.
Right.
And you're suggesting that we offset the comprehensive plan with appropriated funds
Or grant.
or grant.
Yeah.
So
if the grants
Roxanne,
don't
I
come-
believe you got two of the three things that you're asking for, and what we're asking for, and I support, is keeping the ADA compliant door. So that's, I think, where we are.
Thank you.
And I just want to be clear, you're gonna, Michelle, you're gonna swap. You're just gonna take less money you're gonna add less money to the reserve,
Right.
right, as opposed to.
The repairs.
Right.
By what, 20,000?
Mary,
Instead
is
of
that-
31,
Yes, is that a compromise that you're comfortable with?
I'm comfortable.
Michael, can you hear us? Is that a compromise you're comfortable with?
Don't mute myself.
We're not taking a vote on it right now, but
Sometimes it's hard when you're on your phone
It is hard.
It's
to,
really,
So you're-
yeah.
it's
to
really-
actually get to
Yeah,
the
get the unmute.
buttons, so.
Ask for a meeting.
I've requested the unmute a couple
Oh.
of times, but I'm not sure what that looks like.
Maybe you fell asleep.
Yes.
How is that even possible? We are scintillating and exciting people.
So we're taking the comprehensive plan out. The parking lot is only a marker there.
Right,
So
there's no
most
actual,
of the money is still all available. 11 grand for the door.
Well, and the water stuff.
Yeah.
That's about
that we will
50.
agree with.
Oh, and the IT, which is
Michael is saying
75.
you have him
Right.
muted.
So in this. Yeah. So in this outline revised, instead of 10,282, we'd have 105,000 not committed,
You know?
and maybe we'd have more if the parking lot doesn't get taken out.
Right. And I think it's a great idea that he patches it. If he can do the parking lot for $1,000,
Yeah,
let's get
See,
it patched.
exactly. I was happy that he said that that was possible.
And then I think getting, like, we committed to the engineering study to see if we can do something better with drainage.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And so could we also update this chart sometime?
Yeah,
Michelle,
it'll be on the
with
list.
those- With the decisions that we made here.
Michael says he's listening. Michael, if you're okay with what we're suggesting with the ARPA funding, if you could text me it while we're looking at how to unmute you.
I think he might be muted on his end.
Right, but
He-
it's still, a-
Well, no,
I
no,
don't think that Casey can unmute him.
no, he said the host has me muted, so
Oh.
I don't know.
Hmm.
So,
Post has some
if you
media.
go to the participants, maybe
Yeah, you have to go to participant.
Click on it, yeah.
click on it. Oop.
On the phone and
Yeah.
The option ask, gives me the option to.
all we can do is
Well-
ask
Can
you
hit
to
the-
unmute, Michael.
Everybody, but everybody else is unmuted or muted on their own board right now.
What is that bottom, next to mute all at the bottom, what is that?
3 dots.
Allow and participants, oh, yeah. Yeah, Michael, it looks like from our end, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, you gotta check that allow participants to. unmute.
Yeah, it's checked, or it was
It
checked.
was checked, but she unchecked it.
Okay,
Yeah, it does- you need to check the participants for unmute themselves. The third one.
so third one from the top on that list.
So allow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was checked before, you just unchecked it.
Okay,
Okay,
But it was checked. when we-
okay.
yeah, yeah.
I think
Then
that's
she
good.
unchecked it, now
Right.
she checked it again, so we should be.
But maybe he can just text. the
What
answer.
are, yeah, let's see.
He said he's okay with it,
Okay.
and he says he's not muted, but you're showing him muted at our side.
Turn up your volume.
Well, no,
No,
you can see that it's not.
okay, he's okay with it. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate
Sorry, Michael.
the multi. System.
I think it's just hard to do.
It is hard. It is very hard. Okay. We'll get an updated document, as part of the next packet.
Including revising.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
I thought you meant. to
no,
add into
this
the-
was well, this will be an
To
update.
add into the
Okay.
tentative budget, because then
Okay.
we have something to work against if the board wants to think about an amount of money that's really not committed at all. Thank you. I'm not difficult. with hearing what I'm saying, Rich. I didn't say anything about $300,000.
We heard what you were saying, we know that.
No.
Yeah.
So those were the main items that we wanted to hit on in A fund. Were there any other big picture A fund items that the board wanted to discuss tonight? Because if we can wrap up A funds, which I think A fund, in my perception, A fund was gonna be the biggest fund to knock out. We can do the smaller funds and B fund at our October 25th meeting. But if you want to continue to go down A fund, we're gonna need to schedule, if there's a lot more on, or if there's more on A funds you really want to discuss, we can certainly do that. We'll just need to schedule a special meeting to absorb the extra budget discussions. So how are folks feeling? You're gonna be super excited about my consent agenda.
I'm good with it.
You're good with AFN?
Yeah.
Mary, Rich,
Mm.
Michael, did
I'm
you have?
good.
Michael, you are doing just great. Don't worry about it. He's had a long day. It's not been Michael's bestest day. The bestest should definitely be a word in this context. I used it deliberately.
My only other question is the interest we're gonna get from the test company, that just goes right into the fund balance?
Well, right now, we have investor reserves, so.
So there's
So
a build
the
reserve.
investment income that you see on that reserve sheet is my estimate of what I think we're gonna get.
If we have $1 million at 3%, we get 30,000 put in the reserve.
Right, if it were for a whole year,
Right, yeah,
right, so I've estimated 10
for the rest of the year.
for the rest of it.
What are you estimating budgeted for next year?
We don't have that in the budget
Yeah,
because
it
it's
should be
going
in
to
the budget.
reserves. But if we do end up investing more money, that's going to be something additional we'll have in the
Well,
budget.
Have 30,000.
We'll have 30,000 in reserve, extra in reserves, just from having $1 million
Correct,
with the 3%.
correct.
And it really should be more now, because we could buy one used to be 3%. So hopefully they're raising their return, we should monitor.
Right. Keeping in mind also that the investments on our financial statements will have to be recorded at market value.
Right, that's fine.
So there'll be unrealized losses potentially depending on the market in terms of what treasury notes were purchased and when they're purchased and whether they'll be discounted.
Right.
But the actual interest income, the
Yeah,
actual yield
yeah.
will
Go into
be
the fund balance.
going up, yeah.
So that extra 30,000, does that just go across all of the reserves or?
Right now, the way I'm allocating it is based on how much of the reserve is as a proportion of
Shows
the
that
total.
total.
Mhm.
But I don't think that we should include it in our budgeting process because it really would confuse the rest of the way things work, because it's going straight to a reserve. It'll be represented in the reserve balance at the end of the year.
Balance.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
So,
it's just gonna be added money we have.
So we should be increasing our reserves. which
Right,
is great.
yeah.
It just
Yeah.
goes on this projected reserve sort of sheet.
Right, and you can see on that sheet, that column
You have
is
the
investment
investment
income.
yeah.
That's just my estimate with
Mhm.
what we'll have for this year.
You're saying we could put some more in this.
Well, we might choose to invest more fund balance money that's not reserved in the future.
Well, if we can get 3.9% we should do it.
But we want to have some experience with this first and really do a more careful cash flow analysis. Just to kind of get a handle on how that's gonna look. So right now, all the reserves are invested, plus the ARPA money is invested.
Let's see.
Mhm.
And so the thought was in part to be able to get through budget season, just because these two ladies are very busy.
Yep.
And get through that, and then come back and look at it with the cash flow analysis in hand. So.
So
in a
I've
couple
already
of
done a
months.
preliminary look at that.
Yeah.
But we just want to have a little experience with it first.
Well, the interest on our money can pay for the door.
It's true, it's true.
It really could, it's true. Excellent. Well, I'm glad Rich, you pushed us in finance committee, and Michelle and Blixie pushed us all on the investment. So
well, just to put it out there, that if we aren't gonna have a meeting next week about the budget, the idea is that next meeting, we would be in a position to schedule the public hearing, which means that we're, yeah. So next meeting, say that there's lots of changes, and I'm gonna need quite a bit of time to balance the budget again. The changes that we made doesn't change the tax levy, it's just shuffling the cups, so it's not a big deal. So, but we would need to schedule a public hearing in order to make the budget timeline at the next meeting. So I just want to put it out there. If we feel like there's substantial things based on what you've seen that you want to discuss about the budget that would indicate some major changes, we might want to schedule next week. So. Just to
Schedule a
allow,
meeting next week, is that what you said?
Well, yeah, because right now we only have one more meeting scheduled to discuss the budget. That's our
That's the-
regular meeting on the 25th. the way I can tell you in advance is I've cleared, aside from, TCR presenting. And they were initially gonna present today, but I was like, I really just want to clear the decks as much as possible for A fund. So they're gonna present to us, but right now I basically have nothing else, and anything I would do, I would throw into a consent agenda again. I'm trying to keep anything of substance off except the budget.
My own, yeah, I'm sorry, my only thing is, given what the Finger Lakes Land Trust took us about, do we want to put some money aside in that fund? That Nancy started to build up funds for potential purchase or buffers or something.
Right now, we have approximately 33,000 that we could start moving towards that. And there's some information that I helped contribute to in the packet. We do have some money, we do have some money in there right now.
Is that the environmental protection?
Yeah, it's
The
the parks
sign?
and public spaces.
Oh, and parks and. public
Yeah.
spaces.
So
Okay, so
Rich,
that's 24 in parks and public spaces and 17.33 in.
Yeah.
Environmental protection.
what I would say to that, Rich, is that, once again, going back to this big question mark about what we know is coming with our capital and infrastructure needs, I think that, weighing, prioritizing, the land trust with the rest of what we want to do, I think wraps into how we're gonna plan to use the appropriated fund balance. I think that wraps into that conversation that we should be having at the finance committee.
We have some money now. We're not aware of any project that's coming. So we have no estimated costs associated with it. And then to Michelle's point, appropriate fund balance might be the logical place to pull from after you've done the analysis. But we do have some money. So should they call me tomorrow and be like, we do have some money that we could start a process with? I hope they don't call me tomorrow. But I'm not sending that call out into the universe, only because I don't want to do it right now.
Careful what you wish.
Exactly, yes. Are you okay with that? Is that okay? Okay. Okay, so does everybody feel comfortable moving forward with, at the meeting on the 25th, doing B fund and the smaller funds? I mean, there's some of the small, like the water district 3, looking at, fire EMS, there's not a whole lot of there
Yeah.
in terms of making massive changes. So it would really be, if you feel locked down on A fund, we'll tackle B fund, and the other ones might be a little bit longer meeting. We could also start a little bit earlier if that makes it easier.
That would make sense for me, because if there's anything that we have to do that I have to go and balance the budget and come back, giving me as much space earlier in the evening would be really helpful.
How would you feel about starting a special meeting at 6 or 6:30?
Oh. I've got is that the 25th?
Yeah,
I've got a rec partnership meeting that day at 5:30, but
okay.
I mean, I don't have to go. I'm not sure what's on the agenda.
Does it make
I mean,
sense to think about a 1 hour meeting or something to do all the other funds except the B fund, and then that shortens that meeting?
You still cover all the highway departments and.
That's a B fund, yeah.
We have the rest of the budget outside A fund. too.
Okay.
So it's a lot.
So that
Maybe
would be a
in
lot,
one meeting.
I forgot about the highway.
It seems like it could be a lot.
I feel like maybe you wanna have another.
Yeah,
It seems like it could be a lot.
It's a lot to process too, and make sure that there's no, there's so detailed for
Yeah.
Michelle and for me.
Yeah.
So
Although we
leave
did-
A little more
yeah.
time.
I mean, we did have most of us in the line by lines, so highway, I'm not highway. Fire and EMS, we could do fire and EMS right now, if you wanted to do those budgets right now. Those are
Sure.
pretty simple to knock out.
We have no control over them.
Exactly. Do you want to knock that one out?
sure.
Okay. Tell us where we're going, Michelle.
All right, well, on the internal budget, it's page number, wait for it, and it's a smaller one for if you got it today, page 15.
Oh,
Thank you.
It's 15, even if you didn't read it today.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's the same, I printed it
I
today.
know.
okay, it's good to know.
Yeah.
What can we say that hasn't already been said? I actually consider Caitlin more of an expert on this than I, but, I guess the highlights here is that you can see that our cost for the fire contract is going up 1.26%. And you know, the SF fund might be the simplest fund that we have in all of the town. Because that contract is directly offset by the tax levy. 100% of that contract is offset by the tax levy. The SM fund, the EMS budget fund, that contract, as you can see, is going up 8.32%. We're following the budget procedures that we see in other funds by stopping the underestimate of revenues, so that 89,000 is an increase, but if you look at your 6-year data that Wixie put together for us, if you look, let me find the page number and I'll just put, oh, it's the last page, making it easy. If you look at the other department income, the SM 1289, the 3-year average is 89,000 and the 5-year average is 89,000. So that.
If you look at the current one, 2023 year to date,
Mhm.
it's gonna come in, if it continues that trend, it's gonna come in at 70,000.
So that isn't through, that's the year to date that we've received, but actually that's only through, I believe, June.
Yeah.
Report, you said it seemed ahead of.
My,
Yeah, so there's a delay of when we will see that, yeah.
That 54 is still having.
Let me look really quick.
Well, right now, if you look at January through August revenue, we're at 61,000, 62,000, and that's for 8 months.
So this says at 831.
Right.
That-
Well, I'm just looking at the August financials. 'cause that's what I
And
have.
so, that comes in a couple months late. So through August, the actual cash that we received was only billing through June. Or whatever it
Right.
was.
You're saying your money worth is through July? or-
I have September financials in front of me, which is 1 month after that,
So through. August,
and it's now through August,
Okay.
and it's at 62.
so then you're 30, 62, 18, that'll come in at least. Not even-
And you wrote in your report that EMS revenues appear to be ahead of budget with only 7.8% of budget unearned. 8 months of revenue recorded.
Right.
Because the budget
budget
is
is
67.
Right.
So I'm saying if you go to current rate, we're gonna come in at 70. Not 89.
No,
Oh, I thought you were just. talking
90.
about the ahead.
It's 92. 92, well, if you're considering it to be proportional. So if you say through January through August, we've gotten, how much did you say it was?
62.
Oh, okay.
So then you total 18 would be 80.
So I would project 93.
Yeah, that's what I'm projecting to.
I took 62 and divided it by 8,
And
and then
then
multiplied it by 12. That's 93.
Rich, this is the first time I've ever seen you do math incorrectly in your head. I am astounded.
So even if it's not
Yeah.
proportional,
Okay.
it's fun.
good enough.
I think 89.
Yeah, I think
is
it's a
not
safe bet.
unnecessary.
Right, yeah.
But, just to reiterate what I was saying, which is that, both the 3 and the 5-year average for those revenue lines is just over 89,000. So, I think we're in good shape there, as far as the ambulance revenue. Yeah, please do, check our math. So,
Because you got 4 months left, not 3.
Yeah, you're right. Good.
Yep.
All right, so
Um,
89.
but I want to point out that there is with that nice aggressive estimate, The pandemic proved to be some pretty strange years, so this budget is betting on there not being a pandemic anymore. But with that said, if that is an overestimate, we do have fund balance that we can draw from on that. We don't want to continue to do that because once again, this is another philosophy to kick back to the finance committee is that knowing what we know is coming around our ambulance contract increases, we want to look at the fund balance as a tax levy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
smoother. So, so yeah.
Fire with nothing, it is what it is.
Is what it is.
Yep.
So yeah, those are the things, and just to demonstrate that tax levy smoother, I'll point out that the our contract is increasing by 8.32, but the tax levy is only increasing by 0.76. So we will be needing to look at that as far as our fund balance goes in the SM fund rather.
Why is that the case that the increase is so low?
Because we're appropriating fund balance, and estimating higher revenue than ever before. So, you know, the difference between the tax levy is about 35,000, we'll just say. And we're increasing, the ambulance billing projection, the revenue line, budgeted revenue by about 22,000. And we're increasing fund balance appropriation by about 10. So that all works out.
How much fund balance is in there?
That is,
No, there's that sheet. there.
yeah,
Change the page.
well, you have
here.
you have the public version. Oh, wait, it
The
should be in there.
estimated
Wow.
ending is 22,
Mhm.
even after appropriating
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
which is why we're.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So
exactly.
just as what you were talking about in the longer, when I was gonna ask if maybe you shouldn't, it doesn't make sense not to do that.
Yeah.
Makes
If
total
anything, I
sense.
would say we should increase the tax levy a little bit more to really not have a dramatic increase
That's what I
in
was
10
gonna
years. or
ask
whatever.
about, right?
But
That maybe, yeah.
I think that's, I honestly, I frankly think that's coming for next year for 2024's budget. One thing that we are going to tackle between now and then is really looking, is there any other way to increase our revenue beyond what we currently have?
You were looking into the grade.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that's just kind of all gotten on the back burner for all the townships, just because we're all in budget season. So we've talked about tentatively, you know, in November, probably repicking up that conversation. And it's also strategically, what can the townships in particular do to increase revenue? And in the case of the village, they're looking at possibly bringing billing in-house. I mean, and
Yeah,
Really,
I'm not
truly.
sure.
Yeah.
that-
no, and I'm not,
More
and yeah, and I'm not suggesting that that makes sense for us per se, but I think there's just a lot of different potential ways we could look at strategizing to derive more revenue. And so we want to kind of look at that collectively, but this is kind of where we are right now. And we have the appropriated fund balance that can help smooth this process as it's only going to get more expensive.
May I ask what your how long a contract you have with both of those services? I just don't recall. Is it 5 years, 10 years?
No.
I think it's year.
It's
Do you
yearly.
negotiate
It's,
yearly?
yeah, it's yearly. We sign.
Well, negotiated.
Well, our contract is usually-
It's a word
Yeah,
in
we-
quotes.
yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, the
Yeah.
village.
Yeah, it's on a yearly
They
basis.
basically, we don't negotiate. They
Yeah,
tell
Well,
us.
I mean what
Negotiate.
you're paying them. I mean, what.
yeah, that's year to year.
It's year to year.
Really, you don't have a multi-year contract?
No.
For fire services, do you have a multi-year?
No.
You don't. Huh, how did I miss that?
Well, because, I mean, maybe partly one reason is because the way it was done is like on a 3-year average of the calls was
Yeah.
factored into it, so it's like a running
Is it
average,
roll?
and so they don't know, like, from year to year that it's gonna be the same, so
Okay.
they preferred it to. They've always done it that way.
We do about half the business of the whole ambulance system, but we have no say in it.
Right.
Because the village runs it.
Well, I was just thinking about fire and EMS services in general. And other municipalities I've seen sometimes have multi-year contracts, that's all. So that it's easier to plan.
Well, we
Yeah.
do, yeah, for fire is less difficult to foresee.
Yeah, I guess I'm speaking
It's
more about
EMS.
fire,
And,
not so
yeah.
much the EMS.
and for fire, we're in the phase of the village is changing how much we'll build to transition in this, we're gonna be, 2023 will be the first of a 5-year transition into an assessment-based model for approximately 75% and a 3-year call average for the remaining 25. The fire department runs fairly, we're not seeing the sizable costs in the fire department because the village owns all of the assets, but the fire company is an independent agency who can fundraise. So like we got Jaws of Life and they fundraised for it. We didn't pay for it out of taxes. EMS is a department of the village, and so they don't fundraise. And
I see, so they're not a separate nonprofit. like
No.
the
Right.
department.
No.
Okay.
so
Thank
we
you.
eat all of
I
those
was, I
costs.
was just
Yeah.
curious in terms of planning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
does
to,
make a challenge.
to that point, I guess there's a projection of how much it's gonna go up when it goes to assessment for us.
Yeah, so so we're on a 5-year assessment trajectory of, we're doing a 20% increase over each of the next 5 years. And at the full 5 years, we'll be fully at, the fullest, our assessment will constitute 75%
Right.
approximately.
But so I'm just wondering about like the amount of fund balance we have, the amount that we're using. Michelle's point about
Would the
maybe
library
that,
have to pay an extra 12,000 a year or something?
I mean, roughly, but it's being staggered in. And so where we're doing the appropriate fund balance is really towards EMS,
Mhm.
which is not on
Right.
that staggered.
yeah,
Fire, because fire is it's a much smaller amount. We're
Right.
paying,
you're talking about EMS,
Yeah.
the 75%.
No, that's fire.
Oh, I thought you were
That's
talking
fire.
about, that's why I was confused. I thought you were talking.
That's why I went like this. 'cause
Okay,
I thought that
Michelle was
yeah.
confused too.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Good
No,
to know,
the
good to
village-
clarify, because I was like, we should definitely increase the tax
Yeah,
levy if it's that's the
right.
case, but. I
no,
think
the
we're
village
okay.
is talking
on the
about
same
going to an
page.
assessment-based
Okay.
model. They just haven't yet for
Okay.
EMS. So that might be coming
Yeah.
potentially,
Okay.
which is, we could have a whole other conversation because it's a,
And it
I'm
includes
sorry to open.
assessment
It's,
of like
It's
Covert
mind-boggling.
and Hector.
Yeah.
They have like a whole different assessment.
Right.
You know, they're in different counties.
yeah,
although
right.
Covert has the same assessor as Tompkins County.
Oh,
Covert
Yeah,
assessment
it's
is done by Tompkins County.
Skylar.
So with all that said, although we don't have any real numbers to look at or modeling to look at, do we feel comfortable increasing the tax levy by just that small amount compared to all of this? I mean, I don't know,
I don't think, yeah, I mean,
like I said, it's a 8.32% increase in the contract amount, and it's only a 0.76 increase in the tax levy.
true.
So it might be wise to, I mean, even bump it up to 1, or, I don't know.
Well, I'll say that I was okay with it in the tentative budget the way it was, but if we want to increase it and push more onto the tax levy, we can. I felt we had enough, ironically, I felt we have enough in appropriated reserve to help
Yeah.
offset it.
Well, we have about 14,000 before we hit the tax cap, and we're just under our average as far as annual tax levy increase goes, percentage wise. So I don't know.
that's under the average by only a little bit, like
Mhm.
we only increase it like
So you're
1%.
saying-
We're using all that
3%.
appropriated.
3%, okay.
So you're saying it's 8%, so that's about $34,000.
Yep. And we're only increasing the tax levy for this fund by about 2,600.
Because of
And-
increased
And we have
revenues.
14,000 we can work with.
And
Yeah.
appropriate.
So I would
Yeah.
add 10,
10,000.
yeah.
Mm.
Because you have 14,000 to work with.
Well, that's for the tax.
To stay at the tax
Right.
cap.
Stay in tax
You
cap.
want to stay under the tax.
Yeah, well,
But still increases what people have. to
Right,
pay.
Yeah.
By how much?
not by a lot.
adding $10,000 to the tax levy. Let me just see if I can do this really quick.
I think that's a tough one, because we don't know how it's gonna hit us in the future. I think this year is gonna be a difficult year for a lot of people because of the cost of energy. And food.
I'm okay with it.
And so I agree that in a regular year, I might think that, but I'm also thinking that
If people are gonna have. all-
it's gonna be a hard.
Yeah,
Well, I'm wondering too, if next year, I mean, healthcare is always going up. Never gets cheaper, but is it gonna go up 8+% again? It's a real
Well, that's
question.
up 6.5.
Well, health, no, I'm thinking, I'm talking about EMS as a
Oh, I see.
subdivision of healthcare.
Right.
And so,
Probably is. Gonna go up at least 6. You got gas costs, you got labor costs. Definitely. gonna be 6%.
right, it's going up over 8% in this one.
Right.
So whether or not that's a permanent. I think that I made it very clear at the meeting with the municipalities. It is impossible with the tax levy to absorb an 8% increase every single year. So something else has to give in that whole scheme. And so that's why I'm pushing the village to, because they want to grow, they will grow with or without us. And if they grow any more than they currently are, they're going to have to buy another rig.
Right.
And that's gonna double a lot of costs.
So that's insane. Why are they doing that? You need a mass, a critical mass to make. it work.
Exactly, and that's the argument I'm making. Instead of picking up one community, picking up Enfield,
You gotta pick
who
a-
can't pay for a whole new rig
right,
by
you gotta pick a
themselves.
10 community.
Exactly, and so I'm pushing them to, when you strategically do this, pick up in mass, so we can offset it, because it's
But
not
this
fair
is
for
where
us.
Size even help.
Are you talking about the EMS? or you're talking about-
EMS,
Yeah.
fire's not gonna get any bigger. Fire's fixed.
So why do they want to do that? Because it's not a cost benefit. There's no scaling.
Except, I'm sure there's a financial benefit to the village. So, otherwise, there wouldn't be an incentive to, there wouldn't be a desire to.
So I think we need to raise the fees we charge to the insurance company.
And that's one of the things we need to look at, and it's whether or not but it depends, the insurance, like Medicare is only gonna give us what Medicare is willing to give us. The other thing that's happening in part of this conversation is there is some tentative state level conversations going on about funding of rural EMS and urban EMS. Because quite frankly, it's impossible for the small municipalities to fund EMS.
Right.
And we don't have an easy, there's not an open market. It's a non-competitive, we're stuck in a monopoly. We can't reasonably go to Ithaca and ask banks to service us as our sole provider. It's not a reasonable option to do that either. So there are state level conversations. There was a bill that passed last year to begin the studying phase that Anna and she's been a part of pushing for $1 billion in funding for rural and urban EMS. Whether or not that's gonna come through. Something has to give, though. This model doesn't work. It's gonna collapse. So, because we can't absorb these costs in the tax base.
Right, so I'm probably leaving it. Did you figure out how much additional?
Almost.
Oh, never mind, Michelle.
It's why this
Well,
was
thank
acting
you for
goofy.
All the work you're doing, keeping up this, Caitlin, it's a lot and it's.
I
it's a
appreciate it. Thank you.
struggle.
It
I
is.
totally understand.
It is.
I've
Because-
been there and I understand and it's really important and it's a lot.
It's a $4 difference.
$4.
Yeah.
$4 per.
For the tax bill. Well, and
for
that
the
should be
average
said,
person. of
the
some
difference
home.
between those two.
$4 for a home's
Right.
assessed value that's average to.
280.
205.
Well,
But
that seems low.
the tricky part is that, everyone's assessment went up, so when you're looking at that example bill that is on the bottom of that
Right.
tentative, it's like, that's assuming that people's assessment, that their assessment didn't go up, which is not true.
Oh, they went up a lot.
Yeah, they went up a lot, yeah.
And
So that average is old.
Yeah.
It's an old average.
Did your assessment go up a lot?
Mine did.
Some,
Mine went up some, it didn't go up a ton.
not a huge amount, but it definitely.
Yeah, so, that. Adding $10,000 to the tax levy for the SM fund,
$4.
would, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fight on this one. I'm fine with doing it either way.
Well, I think if we can, we should give them what we're talking about. We'll need that money to offset increases later.
Sure.
We're singing a different tune
Well, I
when
don't
it comes
think,
to
well,
the,
in this, it's clear. It's clear that we're gonna go up 6 to 7% every year for a long time.
So that's gonna change it from the 0.76% to like 1 point, what was that?
1%.
Percent
Oh, as far as within the,
increase that you had there.
In the SM fund.
it's in
Right.
the SM fund,
Yeah, sorry.
let me just
Lost it on the page, please.
look at it real quick here. Right, please. It would be 3.7%,
Increase to the
of
tax
the
rate.
tax levy,
I think
tax
it's
levy.
$40.
Well,
No, for an average tax bill, yeah.
For 200,000, if you're increasing it by 1-2%, that's 40 grand, 4 grand, 4.
Well, it's 10.
But it's $10,000 on the total tax levy is different than the 3 point whatever percent in the SM.
On the,
Yeah. it's not the entire tax
Right,
base.
right. So it's okay.
So do we wanna,
So that it would be,
Consider
the
that?
change would be 12,000 instead of 2,500.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it'd be 12,000 out of the 340.
And when we're doing this, so we can smooth out future years of increases.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's frustrating because we're gonna have to smooth things out, but we can't smooth out in perpetuity. The model just doesn't work, so I think it's wise I've been persuaded, let's do it. Because we're gonna have to probably increase it by more next year.
Yeah.
I think just being really, clear in the write up to the public that, this is where this is going, this
This
is
is where
going
it's
in an
going.
unsustainable direction.
Yep.
We're doing our best. And, yeah, so that they know where the money's going or not, and
Yeah,
in case you need public support for some decision down the road.
At least the fire didn't go up much, so.
No.
Right,
nope,
and the overall tax isn't, I mean, the assessment went up. but
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in good shape there.
Is not going up.
Okay. Now, what about the thing you talked about last time with the water districts and the water district that's out in Waterbury Road and that whole issue?
that is gonna come out of B fund. So, we can talk about that next time, or I can give you an update. I mean, I don't have.
Oh, let's do it next time.
Yeah.
So back to when we do everything in
Michael,
Yeah.
says
One
he-
meeting
Michael
or-
says he can start early on the 25th. We would have the B fund and DB fund and the water districts. Is there anything else I'm forgetting?
Covered DA already.
PDADB water districts is what it would be.
Yeah. I think the stuff we covered.
Oh, I thought that.
Wait a minute, where's DA?
So, yeah,
Probably it's after, right before DB.
oh. so
Thank
it's
you.
not-
Got a smart aleck on my hands.
Oh,
That's
it's
what
probably, it's the
Oh, there's
double
DB.
sided, yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there's DA.
Okay, all right, so what are we doing?
We don't know.
Well, we've got,
We gotta do these other things.
It is a lot in one.
What-
I think Michelle needs to change.
Yeah, like,
Even
if we
you start
did
early,
anything to
because your
change,
time will-
yeah, if we did anything to change the tax levy, I would need a lot of time just to ensure that it's not messed up, because we need to pass a resolution for the public hearing that
the-
states what the
yes.
tax levy is,
Preliminary budget.
right?
Yeah.
So it would be a big deal. So I think that, given that everybody was at the line by lines, but you know, you never really know what's gonna come out of these conversations, but. Although I would love to, I mean, really, if we could meet at 6.
Yeah.
And it only takes an hour and then I can go and calculate it, and if Lixie's here and can double check it real quick, you know, it's like it's not ideal. But
So do we? What about if we tried to do it on the 25th and we scheduled a tentative meeting on, say, the 27th? Is that too late? If we couldn't pass the. If we couldn't schedule the public hearing,
so you're saying that we would say, we would schedule the public hearing on the 27th? Is that
well,
you're saying?
what I was saying is have a backup meeting scheduled. So that if we do run over on the 25th, we already have a meeting scheduled. If necessary. And if we don't need it, we don't have it.
So, the
That's
public
one
hearing
idea.
has to happen the Thursday after election day, before the Thursday after election day. So say we schedule it on the 27th.
And it has to be noticed 5 days in advance. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that would give us just enough time. The 27th would really be the last day we could schedule the public hearing. Okay,
What about meeting on the 26th?
Then a
Yeah.
Wednesday,
That's a Wednesday.
Do a Wednesday morning?
yeah,
Or I know I can't do a Wednesday morning. Never mind. Wednesday evening?
Sure.
and that's just our backup plan. We're not gonna do it right now, but we'll.
No, we could tentatively schedule a special meeting for the 26th.
Mhm.
And if we don't need it, we don't have it. But we could start early on the 25th also. Mary, would you be able to start early on the 25th or do you?
Well, yeah, I could, I wouldn't be able to go to the rec partnership meeting.
Is that okay?
It's at 5:30 to 6:30, so, by Zoom. So we'd be starting at 6.
Yeah.
Mm.
You could come here early and hang out and do your meeting for the first 30 minutes.
So
Yeah.
what I would say is that if on the 25th, whatever discussion, if it ends in a change in the tax levy, then I would say we should take advantage of that 26th to give
Sure.
me the time to balance the budget.
Is that okay with
And if
everybody?
not, then
Is that, and you're talking about the 26th in the evening?
Uh-huh.
I may actually have to participate remotely on the 25th and the 26th, but I will
Okay,
give my location 5
Exactly.
days in advance.
Perfect.
So, it's harder to participate remotely, I can see, but, and it might not happen.
I think you were at most of these line by line.
Yeah, I was at. most of
So,
them.
and if
And
you
I
have
could just write in.
questions in
email,
early,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, no, I.
It was
wasn't-
really helpful to get questions in advance, so thank
Yes.
you. It made it a lot easier for us to,
Right,
So on the
and it's
26th,
super helpful to have these really good.
are
some-
we talking about 7 o'clock,
It's been a really good. process.
6 o'clock?
so I can do either. What would you prefer? There's,
So you're talking about starting at 6 on the 25th?
Yep.
And
I potentially might have trouble with devices, but it's not.
yeah, I mean,
It's just that I have a library. book
Yeah,
that
right,
goes-
right,
that
yeah.
Sometimes goes till 6
yeah, I think
at
that,
TCPO.
yeah, I think that'll be fine.
I think it'll be fine. And if we really wanna, we can always put a pin in something and circle back when we
Right.
get here if,
But,
is
you
this
know,
the
I was
26th
gonna
or 5th?
come here after that.
so we'd start 6 o'clock for both of those
Oh,
meetings.
okay, sorry, I got confused.
I can't imagine how you could possibly get
If you're
confused.
talking about not being here on the
25th,
okay,
5th, as early as that. 7 was not a problem.
but the 26th is
will
also
be
the same,
tight.
okay. Okay.
Casey, isn't this fun? We're committing Carissa to being there. And she's not here to agree.
Yeah. When did she come back?
The 24th.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'll be here. I have a feeling things might get pressed into service anyway.
Well, that seems like it could work, and if we review and send questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
Then that helps a lot too.
Yeah, so what I'll send between now and then is just the updated, it'll be in a quasi mode of preliminary where there's gonna be some funds that are still unchanged from the tentative budget, and then there's gonna be the A fund and the SF fund will be changed preliminary, yeah.
But for our discussions on the 25th, we can just go with what we have, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can go with what you have, but you'll have a new tax rate.
Yeah.
That tax rate sheet will be updated,
okay.
so for full context.
And for what it's worth,
Just for the SM tax rates.
That's not
change,
yeah.
right?
But it will, it affects.
Well, you add it
the-
all,
yeah.
but we haven't changed any A funds.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
Yep, just FM.
oh, no, you're fine. I was just gonna point out that the DA and DB fund, I mean, one good thing is we're not projecting any major
Right.
changes, so
Right.
it's a pretty,
Yeah.
there's a lot, there's not a lot of, there's not a whole lot of change going on. They're not big ticket items, so it should be a,
When the B fund is that, it's not that much in it, period, and we talked about the one big thing
exactly.
today already, so.
You gotta keep doing these memorandums.
Yes.
So,
So no, this is the consent. So we're ready. If you're ready to move on, we can do our consent agenda.
Yeah.
So the items for the consent agenda,
We're gonna leave.
please do enjoy
Thank you.
what is little is left of the 11th of. Yes, Michael. 6 PM. I'm sorry, I just saw this. 6 PM on both the 25th and the 26th. He said he can make them work. But so for the consent agenda, the items are all in the resolution, the recognition of the National American Indian Heritage Month for November, which will then also grant me permission to go buy said flag. And then the flag will fly in November. The IXM service contract, I had it reviewed by legal counsel. And got the green light. It basically, we don't have to pay for it until 2023, but it will actually pick up service in November when our, I skipped the comprehensive plan process. Okay, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Did anybody have any problems with the consent agenda items that are on here?
No.
If so, then I would have a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
So move.
Second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry about that, Niels. I jumped ahead, but then we're all done with that. And then we had the comprehensive plan process update. What I was gonna update and Niels and I were talking about, we did have a meeting just to talk about more outreach we could do for the steering committee itself. And we talked about different places where we could essentially for free look for, expand our message on the steering committee itself. This is not our public engagement plan. This is literally just where we could distribute the fact that we're looking for steering committee members. So, because right now the only place we've advertised is in our own listserv, and we brainstormed the list. I can give you a quick summary of that. Niels, did you want to do a quick summary or Howard? What exactly would you like to present? We did not coordinate this. I'm sorry. I've been very budget focused.
Did not coordinate. I don't have the list in front of me.
I have the list in front of me. Perfect. Do you want me to go through it quickly?
Sure. Go for it.
So, reaching out to, see if the school district will advertise for us. Pre-COVID, we did like actual handouts that they would send home. But they've moved mostly electronically at this point. So that's a place. I can also do it through our connections to the Youth Commission. The list of farmers, and other ag-related people that Mary has, that we got through
Like
Cornell
100
Cooperative. Yeah. And we have several different listservs that we could tap into. We have the community COVID leaders listserv. And then there are different, and I only know some of them, and I'm only on one of them myself, neighborhood listservs. So Willow Creek has one that I know of. My neighborhood has one, and Falls Road has one. But we didn't know if there might be other, we didn't know if you, based on where you live in the municipality, are aware of any other listservs we could reach out to. I didn't know if your neighbors had one, for instance. Well, if you think of any. And then there's Jacksonville also. Jacksonville has one. And then we need to reach out to the other, you've already done it for CSAC. But we need to spreading it through the other town committees. And then different groups like Rotary, the Ministerium. Neil's worked with sharing information with churches. We do have some private schools in the area, well, Namaste in particular. And then we could do press releases, which are free. As well as we could, if we wanted to, we could do some small advertising in the Seneca Stropper if we wanted. But we had the Trumansburg Free Press, Ithaca Voice, 14850, Ithaca.com, Thomas Wheeling, those would all be free with a press
That's
release.
Food Smart next to where.
Smart Start, that's a good idea. So those are different places that we identified locally that we could share our message about the steering committee outreach. And so wanted to just bring that back to the group to the board to see if there were places that we weren't thinking of. We're basically looking for free places that we could start spreading that message.
So how long are you gonna do this for? Just wondering, it's a huge amount of difference and wait for stuff to come back and all, and we have like 3 people who did apply just off of the listserv, so that we're, collecting, but and I guess it's a total of about, well, presuming those other groups put somebody on, and one is the business community, that would be, it's like 4 to 5 people total, right? Extra from the community that aren't the people who are already associated with these groups. So we're looking for 4 people to 5 people, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to point out that so there is a very limited audience who actually reads our newsletter.
No.
And our DEI policy actually requires us to do outreach. And I think taking a couple of weeks to share the message that's already been created with a broader group that doesn't cost us any money. And we now have a state planner on staff.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
That's-
I'm not. at all.
I'm not suggesting it's a months and months long process.
I'm just curious.
Maybe it'd be
I'm
good
not
to have
arguing
a
against it. I think
deadline.
it's a good idea. I'm just wondering what's the sort of timeline for doing it, and are you gonna just use sort of the blurb that we wrote for the newsletter?
Yeah, I think a
I mean,
a
that seems
version
like
of
it
that.
works,
Yeah.
and then that we're looking for up to, 4 community members or some, just so people have some idea. And I think would be good.
Because we don't have to just do it for the comprehensive plan, we can do it also for B committee. The B committee. Folks up there.
Right, I mean, I guess you could let people know what else we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're gonna try to do this in the next 2 weeks or something? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
What do you think, Niels? Does that start to seem realistic based on your work schedule?
To get that information out, yeah.
I mean,
Not to pull everything together, because you're starting to get into holiday season and traveling and stuff, but yeah, to get that message out.
What do you mean, pull it together?
he's so differentiating between advertising for the steering committee and the public. We're separating out the public engagement. So this is not the public engagement. This is just the steering committee
Okay,
advertisement, which we have a good draft of already.
right,
So
that we were using for the comp plan. I have that as a Word document.
Great.
Because I
wonderful.
think I wrote it for Chris.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending it to us.
Yeah, sure.
That would be great.
So that we could start evaluating like the people we are, or we can put some kind of deadline in there so people send something in if they're interested quickly. So, because we have these other people that, I mean, I've talked to them and all and said, we're collecting things, but maybe it would be good to have a timeline that we're gonna get back to people, at least whatever, interviewing them or thinking about it. Yeah.
I could send the blurb, I'm in the Rotary Club,
Perfect. Thank you.
although most of the Rotary members don't live in Ulysses.
Right. So it needs to
Live
be
in
the people-
Burdette.
Well, we could send
Enfield,
it to the,
but, I'll put in a little thing.
the business, well, who, the
Chamber.
Chamber.
Yeah,
Chamber,
I'll let
yeah.
chamber in there.
You had talked about that before.
Yeah, no, I just didn't put it in my outreach list.
Right.
Do
Um,
I think do they send a
They do.
newsletter? Sporadically.
Sporadically,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I should write a note to myself to send this to you.
So we're not gonna have another town newsletter until the 28th. So maybe 2 weeks after that would be the 11th is, well, it's a holiday, but,
Well, I mean, it could still be a holiday for a deadline, right? Yeah.
right. I just don't know right now. I don't know if Chris is gonna send out a newsletter that day. It would be the only, but we could have the deadline be that.
Right.
You wanna say the 11th of November?
And
Is the
then if we
deadline
get-
for applications?
Yeah, if we get things a couple.
Is that a
days
Friday?
after.
It is a Friday.
Okay.
Yep,
Or you can make it the 13th and then it's a Monday or whatever, and then people have
14th,
that
yeah.
14th, then people have that weekend
Sure.
too, if they noticed that sometimes people need another
Yeah.
weekend to process things. you know?
Absolutely. So we could do the 14th. That's great.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, awesome.
And we don't have to create an application form or anything, so that makes it easier.
All right, because we already have, we're
Right.
using. the
I was
same-
just, yeah, I was just assuring Neil. So yeah, we don't
No,
have to
we're
do that.
using the same one, right? Because that's what the other people use already.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
awesome. So we'll start chipping away at that list. And if you guys think of anybody else,
Mhm.
is there anything else you can think of that it makes sense to?
I did have one ag person who's a farmer in the town who might be interested, so I can.
Great.
Follow up with that one, you know, I can give them the same word we're using, so it's consistent.
Awesome.
So didn't submit anything. Great,
Wonderful.
it's good.
Well, thank you very much and for putting in yeoman's time tonight. Appreciate it, Neil. Good night.
Thank you, good night.
Okay. I don't really have any other updates.
You have to do the thing.
We do have to the claims. I know that their staff, so are we good to just move past that? Or does anybody feel need to talk? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I'll send an email about it, but there's a public event on flooding that the EMC, they do a once a year public event. And it's on, I would have put it in the newsletter, but there's a, but they're doing it on flooding and flood preparation and stuff, October 18th, so I'll send that to the board, and if you know anybody, and Casey, and so you happen to just personally know anybody who might be interested, maybe Michelle, you can send it out to them, that's the only way we really have to get it out. And we also have
Friendly community.
an open EMCC because Kate Darfler became the village.
Right.
EMC rep, so
Oh, did Mark resign from that also?
yes.
Oh, I did
believe
not,
So.
I did not realize that.
I think so. And
Okay.
so I talked to one new person on our CSAC who might be interested. She's gonna try to go to the next meeting, and then another, and two people that sort of are CSC related who might be interested, but that's another thing that we have open. If someone has an environmental
Oh,
interest,
great.
is the EMC rep for the town.
And that's a county.
It's a county advisory board, the Environmental Management Council.
Okay, what happened with the planning?
Well, I did outreach, Pete, and I've got back and forth. And nothing's actively transpired because the board's not meeting this month. And I wanted to bring Niels into the loop, and I've been gradually doing that. Environmental management, what was the committee?
Council.
Council.
Yeah,
And-
I'll send you the info, so you know with the link to
Yeah.
where the meetings are and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we
Send
should
you that.
advertise. Didn't realize
Yeah.
we didn't have a rep.
No.
Okay.
Just on the planning, like, remember when the people came that wanted to do the Restore New York or Renew New York? And
Oh, yeah.
they were gonna try to get on the
Engelhardt.
BZA and the planning board schedule, and so that just disappeared, I guess that. didn't
Yeah,
happen.
it hasn't,
Fizzled
so-
out, okay.
I don't
Now,
know,
We don't know,
now,
they never did get on. their
No,
schedule.
no.
Cause they were trying to see if there was another,
There's supposed to be
Application on the
another
timeline.
funding round.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, but they're just on hold, we haven't heard. anything.
Yeah.
Just curious.
What happened about who we were gonna appoint? Did we talk
Yeah,
about-
no, I know you're talking about, we'll most likely we'll pick that up in November to be at this point, just because I'm trying to clear the deck on October. Okay. Approval of minutes. We had the minutes circulated from September 27th, regular meeting.
I had a couple of things there that I actually typed out, so I
Okay,
could read them and, because I can't really add them to the. To this, that, and then I can just handle it if you want, so. So. The September 27th draft, so for old business comprehensive plan update. The first sentence reads, Ms. Marino presented a supporting document she had created sourcing information from surrounding municipalities to support the objectives within the tentative budget reserve additions, and that's not quite right for this. So I'm suggesting that we change it to Ms. Marino presented a document she had drafted to outline the overall objectives, key elements, and process for the comprehensive plan review and update project. Okay, so that striking that first sentence and replacing that with that, and then completely striking the second sentence. Because it's kind of, we don't need to say that, it's in with the document. And then in the third sentence, I would add on to it, it was Ms. Olson would still like to add 1 to 2 youth liaisons in addition to 1 town board member. 20 to 25% of the population is youth, so reach out to high school to gauge interest in participant options. And then I'm suggesting add Ms. Marino, apologize for the omission, and we'll edit the document to include these liaisons so that we know that it's in the document. And then I would suggest that, as Krista has done, sometimes we append the adopted document to the end of the minutes so that if people want to see it, they can,
Sure.
because Krista does that sometimes. And then under new business, just so people have it right, presentation of the tentative budget. The sentence says Ms. Marino would like to discuss the B fund more for further ESPL dot. And I don't know if that's a typo or what ESPL is. So anyway, I just like cited just figuring out what ESPL is.
Yeah, I saw that. too.
Yeah.
I wondered.
Okay,
what it's
and
good
then
for.
under board member, where is that?
Board member updates.
Yeah, board member announcements and updates. The first sentence needs to just be cleaned up to be make sense a little more, because it says Ms. Marino, Health Department Community announce Tompkins, not quite spelled right, county funding for septic system. So we just need to fix that. And then in the second and third sentences, I suggest a rewording to make it more clear, which says that Ms. Marino suggests that the board begin considering ideas for using Clean Energy Communities grant funding. She's been working on actions with the CSAC, and we will qualify soon to apply for 10,000. So just changing the second and third sentences to that. I wrote this out, Casey, so I can give it to you if the board wants to make those changes. So I would move the minutes with those amendments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'm realizing I don't have, hold on. I don't have the budget modification. I reviewed the budget modifications, but Michelle didn't send me a copy of it. Fudge. So. there she goes. I'm gonna see if I can post this to next time. Okay, well, we're gonna do budget modifications at the next meeting. Because I don't have them, and that's, she didn't send me, she gave me a physical copy and I didn't bring it. And they're fairly minor, so.
Right, it's not gonna preclude you from paying
No,
anything this month,
it's
so
not.
it's fine.
So I apologize that
No,
the
we're-
dropped that one
Right.
sizably. So then we have, the payment of claims that's on your resolution sheet. Payment of claims for voucher number 433 through 475 in the amount of $162,531.28.
I'll do that.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. And that brings us to privilege of the floor. Is there anybody in the public who wishes to address us? No, thank you. Okay, well, not seeing anybody jumping, it's Michael, there are no need for apologies. Thank you for being with us today on such a hard day. So I
Yeah.
will pass to Rich.
All right, move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. 9:51. It's still before 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
so
Okay, that was a lot, but
it is
It
a
was a
lot.
lot,
Yep.
but you know, it's a lot less meetings than we had
Oh,
last
and
year.
it's so much clearer because it's really good, great write-ups. It's a good process.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate you guys. For the process.